Our story begins as we follow a man arriving in this mysterious world for the second time. A grand voice echoes, welcoming him to the vast and untamed Starfield continent. The system prompts him to choose a class, and he settles on the balanced path of the Guardian. Having returned from a previous life, he chooses this role with absolute certainty and purpose. He possesses the only SSS-rank talent in the entire server, Soul Steel, linked to his Starfield halberd. Whenever a creature dies within 1,000 meters, it leaves behind a soul fragment only he can see. By absorbing these fragments, he permanently gains 1 point of attack power and 1 meter of attack range. This bonus stacks without limit. After naming his character Double Standard, he arrives at the Novice Village. He is momentarily stunned by the sheer flood of players, though as a regressor, he expected this chaos. Unlike the others waiting in long queues at the village entrance, he heads straight for a humble, thatched hut. He finds a specific villager to activate a hidden quest, handing over his system-gifted longbow as a gift. With the villager's help, he climbs over the wall to leave, which, naturally, leaves the onlookers in total disbelief. They wonder if he plans to fight monsters with his bare fists, but he ignores them and circles the village. He moves quickly toward the outskirts where the low-level training spots are located. The area is packed with new players hunting spirit rabbits, and even without a weapon, he isn't worried. In this world, one can technically beat a rabbit to death with their hands if they are skilled enough. His gaze falls upon a rabbit that was just slain by another player, and his soul begins to drift upward. The fragment flies directly into him, merging with his body as his attack power increases by 1. His attack range grows as well, and feeling satisfied, he moves to the very center of the hunting grounds. He stands perfectly still, absorbing a constant stream of soul fragments from the crowd in just 10 minutes. His attributes undergo a world-shaking transformation, as both his attack power and his range begin to skyrocket. He has already far surpassed any normal player, and his strength only continues to grow with every rabbit's death. While he is busy absorbing these soul fragments, a soft voice suddenly calls out from nearby. A young girl remarks to her brother that the man looks pitiful, noticing he doesn't even have a bow. Her brother, Yao, tells her to stop. They are struggling to get experience themselves and have no time for others. She asks if they can help him anyway, but Yao tells her to mind her own business as 5 hours pass. The crowd at the village entrance begins to thin out, and our protagonist's attributes have reached a staggering level. His attack power has hit an absurd 4,258, with a range of 4,253 meters. Half an hour later, he decides to move. Fewer players are emerging from the novice village now, and the rate of rabbits dying nearby has started to drop. Seeing this, he stops lingering and heads toward the level 1 training spot where the monsters are wild cats. These cats are stronger than rabbits, but have similar health, meaning they die just as quickly. Here, he spots a familiar pair. It is the same brother and sister from before, still working hard to make their way in this world. The brother is a rogue, and the sister, Yao Yao, is a priest. Together, they are putting all their effort into fighting the cats. Every time a wild cat's claws strike the brother, he winces in visible pain. To be honest, it looks quite unpleasant. Yao Yao says nothing, but she sends an apologetic look toward our hero, knowing her brother is working hard for her. She casts a healing spell, and a flash of green light rises over her brother's head, restoring 61 health points. The brother beams with joy, telling her that after 2 more cats, they will level up and move to stronger monsters. Yao Yao agrees happily, but their peaceful grinding session is about to be interrupted. Following her cheer, a wild cat the size of a husky suddenly spawns right in front of them. It is a wild cat boss, its body wreathed in a faint, menacing purple glow that signals real danger. This sudden turn of events immediately draws gasps from the surrounding players, as everyone shifts their full attention toward the Wildcat King. The crowd descends into chaos amidst the shouting, and a massive wave of players begins. Rushing toward the boss, some long-range classes have already launched their first attacks, as field bosses have no limit on how many can fight them. As long as your range is sufficient, you can engage. Afterward, the experience rewards for the boss will be distributed based on damage dealt, though anything less than 1% won't count. The item drops, however, belong entirely to whoever lands the killing blow. Compared to the noisy crowd, our hero remains remarkably calm, because only he understands that the appearance of this Wildcat King was no accident. It is a core mechanic of Xinyuan. When monsters in an area are slaughtered in massive numbers, there is a chance for a regional boss to spawn. This Cat King is the result. The rabbit area is the only exception to this rule. By now, the attacks from several long-range players have landed on the Wildcat King. Everyone watches these initial strikes with excitement. To be honest, they all believe that if they can just deal damage, it means the Wildcat King can be killed. However, to their utter bewilderment, as the barrage of ranged attacks hits the boss, only a few pathetic numbers like -2 or -3 pop up above its head. Nearly 98% of the ranged damage is ruthlessly swallowed up by the creature's defenses. This sight leaves the surrounding players completely stunned. In this entire field, only he knows the real reason why. The damage calculation in Xinyuan differs from traditional games. If an attack cannot break through the defense, It simply will not deal damage. Not even a single point of pity damage is allowed. At this moment, the player's futile efforts only serve to enrage the Wildcat King. With a piercing screech, its razor-sharp claws instantly extend. It swings violently at the crowd in front of it. We see the players standing directly in its path. A group of warriors get instantly obliterated. One particularly unlucky player even drops a piece of equipment upon death, which, naturally, is snatched up immediately by a quick-witted rogue standing nearby. The crowd descends into utter chaos. We see the players, who were so confident moments ago, now fleeing in terror from the boss. Our hero simply lets out a cold laugh and begins walking directly toward the Wildcat King. The onlookers wonder if he has lost his mind. Even the Wildcat King notices his approach, a flicker of disdain crossing its eyes. To the beast, this human seems incredibly foolish, attempting to challenge a king with nothing but his bare fists. The retreating players freeze in their tracks, their minds collectively going blank at the sight of his audacity. The siblings from earlier are left speechless, their mouths agape. And then, while everyone is still paralyzed by shock, a game notification rings out in his ear, announcing a world-changing event to the entire server. The player Yijian Shuangbiao has slain the Black Iron rank boss, the Cat King. Since he is the very first in the world to defeat a Black Iron boss, his reputation increases significantly, and he is rewarded with silver-tier equipment. He also receives the unique title of Pioneer, because he is the first player globally to achieve such a feat. His deeds will be broadcast across the entire continent of Xinyuan. He is asked if he wishes to hide his name from the announcement. He chooses to remain known. The system announces that the player Yijian Shuangbiao is the first in the world to slay a Black Iron rank boss. This grand announcement echoes through every corner of the game, granting him silver-tier gear, a reputation boost, and that coveted unique title, Pioneer. At this moment, every player has only one thought. Who is this Yijian Shuangbiao, and how can they possibly contact him? While the crowd is still lost in a daze of confusion, he moves with practiced speed to snatch up the loot from the ground. Without a single backward glance, he leaves the crowd behind. We find him a short time later, hiding in a quiet corner of the novice village. It is time to check his gains. He allocates the 10 attribute points earned from leveling up into his constitution, then looks into his inventory. There, an item glows with a faint green light, the exquisite Wildcat boots. Perhaps because it was a first kill, the Black Iron boss dropped bronze tier equipment. However, being only level 2, he cannot wear these boots just yet. Aside from that bronze gear, there is still a silver chest waiting to be opened. He takes a deep, steadying breath. The moment he opens the chest, a brilliant, silvery white light erupts from within, illuminating his face. This is the Silver Moon Longbow, a high-tier silver rank weapon that looks as elegant as it is deadly. It grants a 50-unit bonus to attack range and a 10% speed boost, featuring the active skill, Silver Moon Carnival. For 10 seconds, his firing speed will soar to 200%. To be honest, that is a terrifying prospect for his enemies. His eyes light up with genuine satisfaction. This bow provides exactly what he needs at this stage of his journey. The skills attached to the Silver Moon Longbow perfectly compensate for his current lack of attack speed. With his clearing efficiency now vastly improved, he quietly puts the Silver Moon Longbow away for safekeeping. Disguising himself as a mere novice, he blends into the grinding crowds, bypassing the Wildcat area entirely. He heads toward the distant wild dog training grounds, where quite a few players have already gathered to hunt. However, the crowd here is much thinner, which is exactly what he wanted. He finds a relatively busy spot near the center. He begins to act the part of a beginner, moving aimlessly and firing an occasional arrow just to blend in. While he is quietly focused on collecting soul fragments, a petite figure suddenly approaches and stops right beside him. The girl asks if he is the great Yijian Shuangbiao. He simply replies that she must have the wrong person. She insists it is impossible, claiming she has been watching him for a long time and knows he is the one. She is certain he is Yijian Shuangbiao. He tells her again she is mistaken, but she refuses to be fooled. She explains that she remembers his exact build and stature. She calls him Great God with absolute conviction. She asks if she can add him as a friend, promising to be available whenever he might need a helping hand. She boasts that her healing capacity is immense, and adds that her brother is quite useful for various tasks as well. The girl, whose name is Yahello, says she can even have her brother run errands for him if he wishes. She points toward a nearby thief who is throwing daggers with such speed they leave after images. Yahello, I'm low on health. He calls for help, and without a second thought, she raises her hand. A moment later, a vibrant green light erupts over the thief's head. His health jumps by 88 points. We see Yijian's eyes widen slightly at such a high healing output for a priest of this level. Most priests can barely manage 40 points at this stage, yet this girl, Yahello, is somehow restoring 88. He agrees to let her add him as a friend, only to find that she had already sent the request quite some time ago. Her full name is Yahello Gets Carsick, and we recognize her as one of the 3 legendary healers from his past life. Known as the Human Fountain, the Yahello he remembers from the future was famous for being cold and utterly unapproachable. She seems nothing like that distant figure right now, appearing more like a cheerful, innocent girl. But then, things change. If this priest truly is the future legend, then it stands to reason that her brother must be the infamous Shadow. He asks if her brother's name is Yueying. She looks up in surprise, wondering how he could possibly know her brother. It is indeed him, the veteran thief, the obsessive sister protector, and the top-ranked rogue of the Xingyuan region. He recalls that the brother's talent is pure speed, making him a perfect tool for certain tasks. At that thought, his lips curl into a faint smile. His gaze toward Yaoyao softens even more. He decides not to add her brother yet, telling her he will simply call her when he needs help. After a bit more small talk with the future legendary healer, he finally leaves the wild dog training grounds behind. By now, the main crowd of players has reached level 3, while the elite high players have already pushed to level 4. Some are even approaching level 5. He remembers clearly that the first player to reach level 5 earns a special privilege. That player can claim the only unique quest in the novice village, along with its one-of-a-kind reward. Such a reward would be an immense help for the long road ahead. Over 6 hours have passed since the game began. Because he is technically an employee using a standard gaming helmet, his total daily playtime is strictly limited to 8 hours. He must use the remaining hour and a half to push his level to 5, or risk falling behind the very history he intends to rewrite. His plan is to claim the dungeon quest immediately. Once it's in his log, he can wait until tomorrow to finish it. He checks his talent. It has already stacked over 6,000 times. With a range and attack power exceeding 6,000 meters, he can now one-shot any ordinary monster at this stage. Relying on his deep knowledge of the novice map, he moves with purpose. He bypasses the training areas for levels 9 and below, heading straight for the deepest reaches of the novice village. We see a massive valley where level 10 monsters known as brutal bears roam. These bears have high health and thick defense. However, they are quite sluggish. Players with decent combat skills can usually take them on one-on-one. Because of his absurd range, he doesn't actually need to risk entering the valley at all. He climbs a nearby towering cliff, which offers a perfect view of the valley and the bears below. The distance is less than 1,000 meters. He puts away his novice bow and equips the superior Ima longbow. Drawing and firing in one fluid motion, he sends an arrow flying. It lands with perfect precision on a brutal bear. The bear's health drops by 6,011 points. Just one single arrow. To be honest, it wasn't even a fair fight. The health bar above the bear's head empties instantly. He has killed the brutal bear and gained 180 experience points. He draws his bow again, aiming at the next target. Another kill, and another 180 experience points are his. For the next hour, he becomes a heartless sniping machine. Every time he draws his bow, a bear falls. Before long, he reaches level 5. And the moment he hits that milestone, a game notification rings in his ears. The system offers its congratulations. He has succeeded in his first major goal. As the first player to reach level 5, his strength has earned the recognition of the Novice Village Chief. He is instructed to head to the Chief of Novice Village number 3 to claim the unique quest. It's finally happening. Feeling a surge of excitement, he crushes a town portal scroll and teleports back to the village. He quickly finds the village chief, who looks at him and says he has a specific task that needs doing. The chief explains that there is a task of the utmost importance, and he desperately needs help. When asked if he is willing to assist, he agrees immediately, prompting a series of satisfied nods from the old man. The chief tells him that he wasn't mistaken about his potential and points toward the volcano to the west. A lava demon resides there, and the chief needs him to defeat it, or rather, to subdue it. He is given a scroll to seal the beast, officially triggering the unique hidden quest, the volcanic demon. The description reveals that this lava demon lurks within Mount Jier, located at the westernmost edge of the starting lands. He must use the scroll to seal the demon within 3 days. Checking the clock, he realizes time is tight. With barely 15 minutes left of his 8-hour limit, he decides to log off right then and there. Since this is a unique quest, now that he has accepted it, no other player can take it from the chief. After a full night of gaming, he feels the exhaustion hitting him, so he quickly cooks some ramen and heads to bed. Time passes quickly, and in what feels like a blink, it is already midnight. A flash of light signals his return. We see him reappear exactly where he left off, standing right inside the village chief's house. He checks his remaining game time. Because he had 16 minutes left from his last session, his current limit is now 8 hours and 16 minutes. The system allows a maximum accumulation of 16 hours total. Any time beyond that is simply lost. Upon logging in, he confirms that the unique quest is still active in his log. During the day, he had carefully recalled the strategy for this specific quest, so he already has a plan in mind. However, there is something more pressing to attend to first. Having reached level 5, he can finally upgrade his skills. Every profession starts with a basic common skill. For an archer, that basic skill is the single heavy arrow. With an upgrade, it can become the double heavy arrow. He makes his way through the village to find the trainer. After locating the archer instructor, he spends 100 copper coins to upgrade his skill to the double heavy arrow. Next, we see him open his friends list and notice the only person there, Yaoyao, is currently online, so he sends her a message. He asks if she wants to join him for a quest that requires a healer, while over at the level 4 wild boar grinding spot. Yaoyao is leaning against a tree looking quite bored, idly playing with her beginner's staff as the time passes by. Not far from her, the thief Ying is moving so fast his daggers are a blur until the sudden chime of a notification startles Yao Yao out of her daze. Seeing it is from the expert archer, her bored expression instantly vanishes into a bright smile. She replies immediately, telling him she would be more than happy to go on a quest with a high-level player like him. He asks her to send over her coordinates so he can find her, and Yao Yao doesn't hesitate for a single second to send them. After tracking the location, he arrives quickly. Over here, the young girl calls out as soon as she spots him coming. She is clearly thrilled, waving her arms and jumping up and down while complaining that training in this area is far too slow. He tells her he is taking her somewhere faster and immediately sends a party invite, which she accepts without a second thought. Without even considering it, Yao Yao leaves her brother's party to join his instead, effectively abandoning her previous team in an instant. Meanwhile, Ying is so busy fighting wild boars that he doesn't even notice she's gone until the final blow is dealt. Only after realizing the experience points are off does he notice his sister is missing, frantically looking around for where she went. He calls out for her, asking where she is and why she didn't say a word to him before disappearing like that. She simply tells him she has joined a party with the expert archer and is heading to a high-level training area, leaving him stunned. Panicked, Ying warns her that she is still young and needs to watch out for bad people, begging her to come back immediately. Even though this is just a game, he refuses to let his sister be taken advantage of. To him, this is a serious matter. He decides right then and there that he must send a stern warning to this mysterious archer who took his sister away. However, when he tries to search for the name, the system tells him the player cannot be found. The bastard hadn't even added him back. Fuming with rage at being ignored, he vows that this archer will regret crossing him. To be honest, his overprotectiveness is reaching new heights. We see our archer leading Yao Yao with practiced ease back to the familiar territory of the level 10 savage bears. She asks nervously if they can really handle level 10 monsters, but he simply offers a quiet smile without saying a word. Standing on the high ground, he draws his bow and releases an arrow that streaks through the air, dealing massive damage. The savage bear below is killed instantly, granting him 75 experience points for the effortless kill. As he absorbs a soul fragment, his attack power and range both increase, a small but steady step toward absolute dominance. Beside him, Yao Yao watches the entire display with her mouth hanging open wide enough to fit an entire egg. She had imagined many ways he might fight, but never expected him to snipe a monster from hundreds of meters away. Deep down, she can't help but realize he is incredibly strong, far stronger than her brother could ever hope to be. Our archer, however, isn't focused on her shock. He simply draws the bard's longbow and prepares for the next shot. He begins a rapid-fire assault, knowing that each savage bear provides a consistent 75 points of experience. Since he needs 6,000 points to level up, this repetitive grind is simply a necessary part of the process. To complete his unique quest, he knows he'll eventually need a priest's healing, making this shared experience a wise investment. It is essential to get her to level 5 quickly, and under his relentless barrage of arrows, the goal draws near. Yao Yao's experience bar begins to fill at a visible speed, surging forward until it finally hits the limit. She announces with a dazed expression that she has already reached level 5, her head spinning from the sheer speed of it. To be honest, her brother spent all of yesterday swinging his daggers like a whirlwind and didn't even come close to this. Her excitement doesn't slow him down, though. He continues to systematically eliminate every bear in the valley below. He tells her to head down and collect the dropped equipment, and she quickly agrees, eager to be of some use. As she heads into the valley, he remembers how he had to leave a field of loot behind during his last visit. He won't make that mistake again, even if level 10 gear is currently a bit difficult to sell on the open market. Since the loot is all level 10, our archer remains on the high ground, continuing his methodical sniping. Down below, Yao Yao is kept quite busy gathering the spoils while he maintains his rapid-fire rhythm. The valley is cleared of savage bears once more, but just as they prepare to leave, Yao Yao cries out in surprise. A boss has appeared. Alerted by her shout, he quickly scans the valley to locate the new threat. We see a massive figure that has just spawned right where Yao Yao was busy collecting equipment. She immediately sends him the monster's data. It's a bronze-tier boss known as the Savage Bear Guardian. Its skill set is formidable, featuring Savage Bear Roar, Earth Trample, and a devastating Savage Charge. For a level 10 bronze boss, these stats are truly overwhelming, far beyond what any ordinary player could handle. To be honest, most players wouldn't even be able to pierce its defense, let alone survive an encounter. Fortunately for us, his attack power has already climbed to a staggering 6,452. Without any damage reduction, a single arrow from his bow can strip away over 4,000 health points. He tells Yao Yao to move to safety while he handles the beast, and then he prepares his next move. He immediately activates the unique active skill of his bard's longbow, known as the Bard's Carnival. This skill boosts his attack speed to 200% for 10 seconds, though it does have a 1-hour cooldown. While he usually fires once every 2 seconds, the activation of this skill changes the pace of battle entirely. He can now land over 10 hits in a single window, supplemented by his specialized archer skills for extra burst. He prepares his double heavy arrow, a skill that fires 2 massive projectiles at a single target simultaneously. Each arrow deals 150% of his attack power, making it a truly punishing technique. Based on the numbers, this single skill rotation should deal roughly 12,000 damage to the Guardian. He opens with a standard shot, immediately chains it into the double heavy arrow, and triggers the Bard's Carnival. He begins a frantic barrage of rapid fire, and once those 10 seconds pass, he finishes the rotation with another double heavy arrow. Watching from her hiding spot within the valley, Yahello can only stare as a dense cloud of damage numbers suddenly erupts. The Guardian's health bar vanishes like water through an open floodgate, plummeting until it is completely empty. She is stunned. It was a literal one-shot kill, and the massive experience gain pushes her instantly to level 8. She had assumed that taking down a Black Iron boss was his absolute limit, but it seems she was mistaken. As it turns out, even a bronze boss can be deleted in seconds. At that moment, the system notification chimes in his ear. Congratulations on the first kill of the Bronze Tier Savage Bear Guardian. Your level has now increased to level 8. As the first player on the server to slay a bronze boss, he is awarded 30 points of prestige for his legendary feat. He also receives a gold tier equipment selection chest and 30 free attribute points to distribute as he sees fit. With a universal skill book added to his inventory, the system announces that his deeds will be heard across the entire Xinyuan continent. When asked if he wishes to hide his name, he chooses to remain anonymous, though Yahello's name is broadcast to the world. As the first players to take down a level 10 bronze boss, another server-wide announcement echoes through every corner of the game. Every player currently grinding in the fields is instantly shaken. A level 10 bronze boss at this stage of the game? It seems impossible. Over at the wild boar leveling spot, Yuying, who had been frantically messaging his sister, freezes in total disbelief. He had been certain his sister was being scammed, but she really was leveling, and had even helped slay a bronze boss. One kill might be an accident, but a second one proves genuine strength. Still, he can't help but worry about this mysterious stranger. He demands to know where they are, insisting on coming over to see this man who has taken his sister under his wing. Yahello tells him not to bother, as she is already heading back to the village with the uncle to upgrade her priest skills. These upgrades are vital, as they will make her fragile character just a little bit sturdier. To be honest, she certainly needs it. In addition to the equipment, the Guardian dropped over 600 copper coins, and he fairly hands half of the loot to Yahello. After gathering the spoils from the fallen boss, our protagonist feels a sense of deep satisfaction with how things are proceeding. He immediately opens the universal skill book he received, and since it allows for a personal choice, he doesn't hesitate for a second. He selects a powerful passive skill called Split Arrow, which ensures that once an arrow hits its primary target, it splits into 3 phantom arrows that automatically seek out nearby enemies. Each of these phantoms deals 80% of his physical attack power, covering a range equal to half of his total firing distance. With a 1-second cooldown and no mana cost, this is the only area of effect skill available before reaching level 10. It is an incredibly practical toggleable passive, and for his current situation, it is exactly what he needs. We see that players are no longer as densely packed as they were at launch, meaning he can no longer rely on crowds to do his work. Most players now kill monsters slower than he can with basic shots, so Split Arrow arrives at the perfect moment. With his needs met, he turns his attention to the gold tier equipment selection chest to see what treasures lie within. At the moment, he is only level 8, while most of the high-end gear inside the chest requires the player to be level 10. He carefully sifts through the massive pile of equipment before finally selecting a ring. The Swift Ring, a top-tier gold-grade item, is now his. To be honest, it's a terrifying addition to his arsenal. When he eventually triggers the moon-melting frenzy of his moon-condensing longbow, his attack speed will, for 10 seconds, increase to 4 times its original rate. With that level of burst damage, no boss at this stage could possibly survive. After equipping the Swift Ring and stopping by the weapon shop to restock 2,000 arrows, he is ready to move. He calls out to Yahello, and they head out of the village together to finally complete that unique quest. Not long after, Yuying finally makes it back to the village on foot, frantically searching everywhere for his sister to no avail. Meanwhile, we see our duo traveling west, where he casually one-shots every wild monster that crosses their path. He doesn't even bother to pick up the drop gear or coins. His only goal is to stack his talent points. Yahello mentions that if her brother were here, his speed would make picking up equipment effortless. Hearing this, our protagonist feels a spark of interest. After all, Yuying might lack other talents, but his ability to run is truly world-class. Since his firing range is increasing, he realizes that fetching loot himself would be a complete waste of time. Yahello, where is your brother? He asks. Him, she replies. He's still in the starting village. He tells her to send the coordinates, and they continue their journey. Given Yuying's speed, he'll catch up in no time. Indeed, barely 5 minutes pass before Yahello announces his arrival. He stops and looks back to see a dark figure sprinting toward them so fast his legs are a literal blur. The man doesn't stop for a breath, shouting for the brat to stay away from his sister, or else. Stay away from my sister, he repeats, over and over, his overprotective nature on full display. What I meant to say was, he begins, trying to regain some semblance of dignity. Great God, what exactly did you need me for? He asks, his tone shifting instantly. Our protagonist explains that since Yaoyao mentioned his incredible speed, he has a specific task in mind. He wants Yueying to handle the looting, as he simply can't keep up with the sheer volume of drops. What, you want me to pick up gear? Yueying is momentarily stunned by the request. As a future king of thieves with an SS rank talent, he finds the idea of being a looter utterly impossible. He is visibly reluctant, until he hears that they will split the profits from the gear 50-50. Suddenly, his reluctance vanishes into thin air. Unwilling? That's impossible, he declares. He is ready to go, even throwing a quick, I love you, to his sister for the opportunity. Having witnessed the protagonist's terrifying damage earlier, the claim that there's too much loot to handle seems perfectly believable to Yueying, and at this stage, the demand for gear is higher than ever. Under the heavy promotion of various governments, the GameStar source has become an absolute sensation, though its drop rates remain notoriously low. This has led to a situation where the vast majority of players still haven't managed to find more than a few decent pieces of equipment. Even a high-level player like our protagonist is still wearing novice clothes, which tells you everything you need to know about how stingy this game can be. Yueying decides that if a little hard work and a bruised ego mean his sister can live a better life, it's a price he's more than willing to pay. With Yueying now officially part of the team, we see them set off again, our protagonist picking off every wild monster along the way without slowing down. As they travel, he finally witnesses Yueying's true movement speed, and it turns out the young man is actually faster than he is. We should keep in mind that with his current equipment bonuses, our protagonist's agility has reached 68 points. Under normal circumstances, this attribute would rival a level 10 thief who put every point into agility. To be honest, Yueying's movements are even faster than imagined. Despite being only level 4, he is able to maintain that incredible speed while picking up every single piece of dropped equipment without missing a beat. One can't help but wonder what his talent actually is, but one thing is absolutely certain. If he truly focused on running away, there are very few who could ever hope to catch him. Yet, while our protagonist is surprised, Yueying is simply overjoyed. The drop rates in Star Source might be abysmal, but the protagonist's killing speed is so terrifyingly high that through sheer volume alone, the amount of equipment hitting the ground is starting to pile up quite nicely. He gleefully calculates that selling a white staff for 80 copper coins will buy Yaoyao a durian. Another weapon drops, worth 120 copper, enough to treat Yaoyao to a grilled fish dinner. Then a pair of boots appears, which he figures will cover the cost of a late-night snack for his sister. Fighting as they go, the three of them finally arrive at the volcanic region on the far western edge of the starting village. Because he is carrying the sealing scroll, our protagonist has already drawn the unwelcome attention of the volcanic demon, Calder. As they step into the volcanic region, we see that the environment itself is hostile, dealing continuous fire damage to anyone inside. The closer one gets to the heart of the volcano, the more intense the burning effect becomes. A warm welcome, to be sure. Fortunately, in his past life, the strategies for defeating this volcanic demon were thoroughly researched and mastered. With Yuneo acting as their priest and the addition of Yueying to the team, things are looking up. Clearing this dungeon shouldn't be a problem at all. Our protagonist turns to Yueying and gives him a simple task. He asks him to go ahead and lure all the small fire demons in the volcanic area toward them. Yueying agrees without a second thought, though he does ask Yaoyao to keep a close eye on her brother while he's busy. After giving the orders, our protagonist takes a few steps back to leave the volcanic zone and avoid the passive damage. As he retreats, the red damage numbers floating above his head instantly vanish. It was a calculated move, of course. Yueying charges into the volcanic area with immense confidence, but only a few moments later, the mood shifts. A figure bursts out from behind the volcanic rocks with black smoke trailing from his backside, shouting for help. It turns out these small demons are long-range mages. He desperately calls out for Yaoyao to use her healing arts. A flash of green light erupts, and Yueying's health bar is instantly refilled. This upgraded healing spell is no joke. It is significantly more powerful than the basic version, and Yueying is clearly stunned by the sheer volume of Yaoyao's healing. He narrowly avoids being struck by a fireball from behind. Right then, an arrow whistles through the air from a distance. It strikes the lead fire demon with absolute, clinical precision. Upon impact, the arrow splits into 3, instantly taking down the surrounding demons in a single, fluid motion. In less than a second, 11 small demons are wiped out on the spot. It's a staggering display of power. Before the remaining demons can even react, another arrow falls, and suddenly, the entire battlefield goes quiet. Yueying stares at our protagonist in total shock. He had tried to estimate his strength, but he clearly aimed too low. But he realizes now that he still underestimated him. Has he always been this powerful? You mean the great god Shuangbiao? She replies that he has always been this formidable. Even though Yueying also possesses an SS rank talent, he can't help but feel like he's barely keeping up. With the small monsters cleared out, it's time for the next step. The goal now is to lure out the boss from deep within the volcano. After giving a few instructions, our protagonist sends Yueying ahead. He sends Yuying to draw the attention of the boss, the flame demon Cord. To be honest, it's a bit of a thankless job. Although Cord is a field boss, he has a strictly defined territory, making it quite unrealistic to pull him far away to fight. But our protagonist is different. His attack range has already reached over 7,000 meters. This distance is more than enough to span across the entire Jur volcano, a perfectly ordinary distance for him, naturally. And so, the only role left for our useful tool Yuying is to simply bait Cord into showing himself. A muffled boom echoes from deep within the volcano, followed by thick plumes of smoke billowing into the sky. Amidst this grand display, a massive figure begins to rise from the central pool of molten lava. A booming voice echoes, demanding to know which lowly mortal dares to disturb the great Calder Plain. This is the Flame Demon Calder, a White Eagle rank boss capable of unleashing a terrifying flame roar to summon his minions. As lava erupts, Calder's voice rings out like a massive bronze bell, causing the entirety of Mount Gur to tremble violently. Even the players grinding for experience in the far distance can hear the commotion coming from the peak. The regional chat channel explodes instantly, with everyone assuming this beast is far stronger than the Savage Bear Guardian. In reality, however, the only thing truly stronger about him is the length of his health bar. For our protagonist, the demon no longer poses a real threat. The moment the creature appears, he is already moving. He leads with his heavy dual swords while the Flame Demon Calder lets out roar after roar in the distance. But the demon is bound to the volcano's core, leaving him with no choice but to vent his useless rage upon the scorched earth. Calder slams his massive palms onto the ground, shattering the surrounding volcanic rock into countless fragments. The impact leaves a massive crater, but after a few shots, our protagonist's attack speed begins to stack rapidly. He immediately activates the equipment skill of the Bardic Longbow, triggering the Bardic Carnival to double his speed. In an instant, the arrows fly from his hand with a sudden, dramatic acceleration at an almost exaggerated rate. He launches a relentless assault on the Flame Demon Calder as a dense cloud of damage numbers rises above the beast. The demon's health bar begins to drain like an open floodgate, leaving Yuying standing by in complete disbelief. In less than half a minute, Calder's health is entirely depleted. The demon lets out a final, bitter cry of defeat. He laments to a mysterious Lord Lawrence, confessing his failure as his massive form finally collapses. With the Flame Demon Calder defeated, the next task is clear. He must seal the demon core as quickly as possible. The core hovers beside the corpse, radiating an evil, flickering light. He reaches out and takes the sealing scroll. With a single firm motion, he slaps the scroll onto the core, successfully sealing the demon and completing the quest. Looking at the word completed next to his unique quest, even our protagonist feels a small spark of excitement. This first kill was quite generous, dropping 2 pieces of gold-grade equipment and 1 gold-grade item. First, we see the Demon Staff, a gold-tier weapon that allows the wielder to summon lesser demons at will. Based on one's mana, it summons 3 flame imps to fight alongside the user, utilizing a passive mana burn effect. By consuming double the mana during casting, the power of a spell is boosted to 130%. It is quite clearly a top-tier piece of equipment, perfectly suited for a high-damage, turret-style mage. The summoned imps can serve as meat shields, while the mana burn significantly enhances the wielder's total output. Next is the Demon Necklace, another gold-tier item that grants the user the active skill, Magic Body Immunity. Once activated, it removes all negative status effects from the user, though it comes with a 1-hour cooldown. The Bloodburn passive is also activated, which adjusts the wearer's maximum health to 90% of its original value. It grants a 50% resistance boost, and alongside the gear, we see a gold-grade item, the Demon's Whisper. This single-use gold item is quite potent, capable of confusing a designated enemy for 5 full seconds. Having such a tool in his inventory will undoubtedly be of great help for the tasks he has planned next. It is only then that he notices the area outside the volcano is already packed with players, and a tall, sturdy man steps forward. He is a middle-aged man with a thick, rugged beard who greets them with a simple, "Hello there." He introduces himself as Batian Yidao, the vice president of the formidable Batian Guild. He asks if they were the ones who just took down the boss, but Yuying and the others remain silent. Instead, they turn their gaze toward our protagonist, a gesture that makes the situation immediately clear to Yidao. It seems this trio is led by the man known as Yijin Shuangbiao, our very own brother Shuangbiao. Yidao asks if he has any interest in joining the Batian Guild, offering him the position of Hall Master on the spot. As soon as those words are spoken, the surrounding crowd of onlookers lets out a collective gasp of surprise. Offering brother Shuangbiao only a Hall Master position seemed, to many, like a bit of an insult. One voice mocks Yidao, suggesting he should change his name to One Cheap Cut instead of One Tyrant Cut. The crowd exclaims again as another figure appears. It is Yushin Dangtian, the president of the Yushin Guild. He addresses Shuangbiao directly, promising that if he joins the Yushin Guild, things will be different. He offers to make him the first elder immediately, with the promise of even higher heights if he performs well. He even suggests a promotion to vice president, a title that sends a wave of wows through the gathered players. However, we know that this Yushin guild has a history of being quite repulsive to deal with. The bloody images of them colluding with outsiders to betray fellow players are still fresh in everyone's minds. The very idea of them inviting him to join now is, quite frankly, laughable. If it weren't for the quest he had to turn in, he might have just initiated a PK and ended Yushin Dangtian right then and there. He tells them he has no plans to join a guild, accepts a friend request from Batian Idao, and crushes a return scroll. Seeing that he didn't even spare a glance for the Yushin guild before teleporting away, the crowd is left stunned. Yushin Dangtian's expression darkens instantly as the gathered players begin to disperse into the surrounding area. Soon, news of Yijian Shuangbiao slaying the boss and rejecting the major guilds begins to spread like wildfire across the forums. Naturally, he has no time to worry about that. We see him back in the village, telling the chief that the task is done. The village chief takes a look and nods, remarking that he knew all along our protagonist was a true warrior. He then presents the reward, telling him it is exactly what he deserves for such a feat. A notification chimes. He has completed the unique quest, the Volcano Demon. He receives the unique item, Angel Wings, which can be soulbound to the user. Once bound, these wings allow for free flight and can even be upgraded, a truly enviable piece of unique gear. Only the first person to complete this unique quest could ever hope to claim them, and with a single thought, he activates them. The wings behind his back tremble slightly, and suddenly, he is soaring high into the air. Nearby players busy with their own tasks let out cries of amazement as they watch him fly for the very first time. He enjoys the sensation for a full half hour before reluctantly landing. Just as a notification confirms he has reached level 10. He pauses for a moment, feeling a bit dazed. In his previous life, reaching level 10 had taken him 10 full days. In this life, however, it has only taken him 2 days to reach that milestone, triggering a server-wide announcement. The system announces that a player has reached level 10 and the level rankings are now open, leaving the entire player base in shock. Many wonder if this is some kind of joke. Most are only level 4, and the gap between them is already staggering. Is this some kind of joke? Many wonder. I'm only level 4, yet someone is already level 10? How can the gap be this massive? Oh, it's the great god Shuangbiao, others realize. Well, in that case, it actually makes perfect sense. We see Yushin Dangtian at a level 6 grinding area, and to be honest, his expression is looking quite grim. He realizes that Yijian Shuangbiao is becoming far too much of a threat, and if he cannot be recruited to the guild, then he must be destroyed. He turns to his subordinate, Alu, and tells him to investigate the man thoroughly. If the stranger refuses to cooperate, Alu assures the president that he will handle the matter personally. Meanwhile, our protagonist sends a screenshot of the demon staff to Batian Idao. You see, while the game has an auction house, it also charges a 10% fee, and that is money he would much rather keep for himself. To be honest, who could blame him? It doesn't take long for Batian Idao to respond, offering a cool 100,000 coins for the rare equipment. He asks for a meeting place, and Shuangbiao suggests they complete the transaction right at the entrance of the novice village. Not long after, we see a young man named Batian Zaizuanfeng running toward the meeting point. He is exceptionally polite, and the trade is finished quickly. Naturally, Xia Zuanfeng doesn't dare linger outside the safe zone. He sprints back toward the warehouse in the village center, leaving our hero free to finally focus on his own goals. It is time to start stacking his talent, so he takes to the skies and flies over the area filled with spirit rabbits. Using his incredible attack range and the area of effect from his split arrow, he clears the entire field in less than 2 minutes. He repeats the process at the level 1 grinding spot, and while he works, he reaches out to an old acquaintance. He sends his coordinates to Yao Huiyunch, telling her to bring her brother, Yuying, and wait for him there. By the time he finishes his flight and reaches the designated location, his talent stacks have reached a staggering number. He has surpassed 10,000 layers, and as he descends from the sky to land in front of Yao and her brother, the siblings' eyes almost pop out of their heads, and soon, the group arrives at their next destination. We find ourselves in a small valley shaped by volcanic ash, not far from where the flame demon was previously slain. Our hero takes out the sealing scroll that the village chief processed earlier, and the system detects the area's energy. It senses the residual breath of the flame demon and asks if he wishes to use the scroll to open the teleportation interface. He activates it, and a server-wide announcement declares that Yijian Shuangbiao has opened the dungeon known as the Demon's Breath. As players are invited to venture into the dungeon, it takes less than 30 seconds for a message to pop up from his friend list. It is Batian Idao, who asks if he can help their guild secure the first clear of this new dungeon. He is quite desperate for the achievement, asking our protagonist to name any price for his professional assistance. Shuangbiao agrees, but with one condition: he must be the one to distribute all the equipment found inside the dungeon. He also demands an extra 100,000 coins. Batian Idao agrees instantly, as the first clear is his only priority. After all, the prestige of a server-wide announcement is worth more than any amount of advertising money could ever buy. While waiting for the guild to arrive, other players training nearby begin to gather, quickly recognizing Shuangbiao's famous silhouette. A few female players with rather charming looks immediately approach him, hoping to get close to the top-ranked expert. Standing nearby, Yao Huiyunch watches this scene, with a pout so deep her lips could practically touch the sky. She feels as though her own precious treasure is being eyed by others, but thankfully, Batian Idao doesn't keep them waiting long. Terrified that another guild might steal the first clear, he arrives quickly with 8 elite members to form a full raid team. Once the group is assembled with Yao and the Batian members, Shuangbiao calmly states that everyone must follow his commands. He promises them a smooth path to the first kill, and Idao assures him that anyone who disobeys will be kicked immediately. However, just as they prepare to enter, Yueying realizes he's being left out and cries out that he hasn't joined the party yet. Shuangbiao simply tells him that the guild members are there to pick up loot and he isn't needed, before leading the way inside. This leaves poor Yueying standing there in a state of utter confusion, cursing the cold pragmatism of the great Yijin Shuangbiao. Left behind once again, poor Yueying is left fuming, feeling utterly abandoned by his so-called friend. As we enter the Demon's Breath dungeon, the system prompts for a difficulty level and Shuangbiao selects Hell mode. With the selection confirmed, the teleportation begins, and in an instant, our group is pulled into the depths. The sudden shift in atmosphere causes a wave of discomfort, and the members of the Batian Guild immediately sense something is wrong. They realize they've entered a hell-level dungeon, and a panicked member asks Shuangbiao if he's aware of the danger. He calmly explains that the items he needs only drop in hell mode, leaving the guild members momentarily speechless. Batian Idao wisely shuts his mouth, but the other players in the guild can't help but feel a surge of internal protest. While they keep a straight face, their private chat group is exploding with complaints about what Shuangbiao is thinking. They wonder if he's lost his mind, questioning why he would choose the highest difficulty without even a practice run. Idao tells them to just try it first, suggesting that if he dared to choose this difficulty, he must have a plan. Hearing their leader's words, the others have no choice but to follow along, despite their lingering doubts. Our hero is completely unaware of the gossip happening in the private chat, as his focus is elsewhere. His attention is fixed entirely on the dungeon information for this hell-level version of the Demon's Breath. He remembers this place from his past life. He had failed here before when the final boss completely countered melee attacks. That encounter had led to a total party wipe, but things are different now as he grips his musical longbow. He turns to a player dressed as a rogue and commands him to go ahead and lure the monsters toward them. He instructs the healer to watch the rogue's health closely while telling the others to simply prepare to pick up loot. The rogue is baffled, wondering why a high-health warrior isn't the one stepping up to tank the damage instead. To be fair, these are elite members of the Batian Guild, and despite their confusion over his strange commands, their professional gaming discipline kicks in, and they prepare to follow his lead regardless of the difficulty. They are actually quite impressive, pulling, kiting, and healing with a fluid precision that shows their true experience. At that moment, the rogue who dashed out successfully lures a large group of demons, who begin their pursuit. The demons rush forward with mocking laughter, and the rogue looks tense, knowing these creatures have high attack power. If he takes even 2 hits, he might die on the spot, prompting the guild's tanky warrior to prepare to step in. But before the warrior can move, we see Shuangbiao raise his bow, firing 3 arrows in a single second. Using a combination of double heavy arrows and split arrows, the molten demons are suddenly overwhelmed. Massive damage numbers erupt above their heads, each one exceeding 10,000 points of damage. In an instant, the 7 or 8 molten demons chasing the rogue drop dead simultaneously. They leave behind a pile of equipment and copper coins, leaving the guild members frozen in utter shock. Over 10,000 damage, a one-shot kill. Even Batian Idao is left staring in stunned silence. He knew Shuangbiao was strong, but he hadn't imagined he was this powerful. Still, it was a welcome surprise. His strength finally puts everyone's mind at ease, though Shuangbiao snaps them back to reality by asking why they're staring. He tells them to hurry up and pick up the loot, and the warrior is the first to snap out of it and rush forward. As the gear is collected, the rogue returns to his task, wandering off to lure more monsters toward the group. In less than a minute, the entire entrance of the valley is cleared of molten demons by Shuangbiao's hand. This level of grinding efficiency is something even the elite Batian Guild members have never witnessed before. Shuangbiao mentions he doesn't need the gear and tells them to name a price for the haul. Idao is straightforward, offering a fair price based on gold-tier equipment, and Shuangbiao accepts without haggling. As we move forward, the group soon arrives at the mouth of a lava cave filled with hanging demons. Shuangbiao raises his bow for a single shot, following up with double heavy arrows and split arrows mixed with basic attacks. He instantly kills the nearest cluster of 10 demons, leaving the group feeling a bit lightheaded from the sheer absurdity of it all. They couldn't help but think that if every dungeon run were this easy, life would be a dream. The group continues deeper into the cave, with the younger members marveling at just how powerful their archer companion really is. Soon, we see 3 cave entrances appear ahead, and Shuangbiao knows that the middle path leads directly to the boss. The left and right paths house the necessary switches, so without a moment's hesitation, he leads them into the left tunnel. After walking for less than 3 minutes, the space opens up into a massive underground chamber right before their eyes. In the very center of this cavern stands a flaming altar where a petrified demon waits in stony silence. Behind the demon sits a lever-like switch. To reach the boss, someone must cross over and pull that lever. A single, long chain bridge connects the entrance to the altar, suspended over an endless darkness that requires a brave soul. Once someone steps onto the altar, the demon will awaken, meaning whoever goes across is essentially on a suicide mission. Unless they can kill the demon before it destroys the bridge, they are trapped. The rogue who lured the monsters earlier steps forward. He offers to go, reasoning that his high movement speed might allow him to distract the creature long enough. He repeats his offer, hoping his agility will be enough to keep him alive, and Shuangbiao gives him a simple nod. Signaling that it's time to flip the switch, the rogue immediately charges across the chain bridge toward the central altar. The moment his foot touches the stone, a dull, heavy roar echoes in everyone's ears, cursing the feeble humans for their intrusion. The voice warns that the flaming altar is not to be disturbed as the statue begins to shed its stone skin. Flames erupt as the level 10 elite demon guard, Chaluo, awakens. The distance, however, is quite significant. The guild members wonder if even a master can hit a target from this far away, a thought that makes everyone pause in doubt. But while they are worrying, Shuangbiao has already begun. He notches a simple wooden arrow onto his longbow and lets it fly. Every eye follows the flight of that wooden arrow with bated breath, watching as it soars through the air toward its mark. The wooden arrow strikes the demon guard with precision, and before the creature can even react, it finds itself under a lethal barrage. Under the relentless pressure of Shuangbiao's attacks, the elite demon guard manages to hold on for less than 8 seconds. It collapses into dust before it can even take a single step toward the bridge. As the mini-boss falls, a massive pile of loot spills out onto the altar, leaving the group wondering if there is anything he can't kill. The sheer speed of the kill is almost comical, really, as if the demon never stood a chance from the start. The party members stand in stunned silence, watching the smoke clear from the central platform. It seems our archer's definition of a difficult encounter is vastly different from everyone else's. With the threat neutralized, the path to the loot is finally clear for the rest of the team. A mountain of equipment is revealed. Fortunately, the rogue who was acting as bait survived the ordeal unscathed. He quickly gathers the dropped items, while Shuangbiao simply ignores the various pieces of useless black iron and silver gear. However, he does stop to pick up one specific silver-tier scepter from the pile. While the basic stats of this scepter are quite average, the resurrection skill it carries is incredibly rare and useful. He tells the rogue to give the scepter to Yaoyao, and the young girl is wide-eyed as she accepts the gift. Upon receiving the silver equipment, she realizes it grants a resurrection status to any target she chooses. She is amazed by such a powerful skill, and after the gear is distributed, the team feels much more secure. After the rogue pulls the lever, we follow the group back to the original three-way junction to take the final path. They enter the right-hand tunnel, which leads to another altar guarded by yet another petrified demon guard. Since the setup is identical to the previous room, Shuangbiao decides to repeat his successful strategy. He slays the guardian before it can even touch the chain bridge, and once again, a shower of loot erupts from its corpse. Several more pieces of silver and black iron gear drop, though none of them are of much use to a master like him. And so, after letting Batian Yidao handle the distribution, the 2 altar switches are finally activated, and our group prepares for the end. They must now face the final boss, following the central tunnel deep underground. A short while later, the group arrives at a subterranean cavern several times larger than the previous chambers. However, there is a noticeable difference here. In this cavern, there are no altars and no demons, only a single stone staircase winding down from the entrance. And far below them, the ground is nothing but a churning, restless sea of molten lava. In his past life, Shuangbiao found his skills were of little use here, as there were no solid footholds besides a few small platforms. He remembered standing on those tiny perches to fight the boss, but as a warrior back then, his reach was simply too short. Even though he had pushed his abilities to their absolute limit, he ultimately couldn't escape the boss's devastating lava bombardment. This time, however, he is an archer. He calmly instructs someone from the team to go down and lure the boss out. The rogue hesitates, noting that the space below is far too cramped for his movements, so another volunteer steps forward. Ultimately, the other archer in the party takes on the task, descending the stone stairs to fire a shot at the demon's head. He unleashes a double strike with his greatsword, but it barely leaves a scratch. It deals a measly 5 damage, appearing as 2 tiny, blood-red digits. As those numbers float up from the demon's head, the archer feels a flush of embarrassment. To be honest, it is a bit painful to watch. Compared to Shuangbiao's tens of thousands of damage, this single-digit hit is practically invisible. Batian Yidao feels equally humiliated by the display. He steals a quick glance at Shuangbiao, and seeing no reaction, he finally breathes a sigh of relief. Then, the sleeping boss finally stirs. The beast awakens with a rumble, demanding to know who dares to disturb the great Laurent from his deep slumber. He vows to make them all pay the price, his voice echoing in a low, menacing growl that shakes the very cavern walls. The demon gradually rises from the lava, revealing a form quite different from the massive giants they fought outside. This version of the flame demon Laurent stands only about 5 meters tall, yet his raw attributes are on an entirely different level. Despite his smaller stature, the power radiating from him suggests that this encounter will be anything but ordinary. His stats are on a completely different level. This is the flame demon Laurent, a silver rank boss at level 10. In this Demon King form, he can unleash a flame roar, summon lesser demons, and trigger a massive lava burst. With his giant's body and jade rebirth, the flame demon's exaggerated attributes are finally revealed to the entire group. A heavy silence falls over everyone. They wonder if this thing is even possible to defeat, or if they are all about to die here. Someone tells the others not to talk nonsense, but their eyes instinctively turn toward Shuangbiao for some kind of sign. We see that he has already drawn his bowstring, and an arrow flies from his hand, accurately striking the flame demon below. A massive damage value of 9,754 points appears over the demon, drawing a collective gasp of shock from the party. With over 9,000 damage dealt, the flame demon's hatred is instantly locked onto Shuangbiao, which, naturally, was the plan. The demon growls, calling them wretched insects and declaring that they have finally made him truly angry. He shouts for Yao Yao to get out of the way as the cavern begins to tremble with the boss's fury. A flame burst erupts, followed by screams, and the icons representing the teammates suddenly go dark in a massive wave of death. Standing beside him, only Yahello has managed to survive. Everyone else, including Batian Idao, has been instantly killed. He tells Yahello to hold on tight, and they begin to fly toward the very highest point of the cavern. Yahello is terrified, her hands gripping his arm with everything she has as he carries her upward through the air. They reach the cavern's ceiling, putting a full 500 meters of distance between them and the flame demon in the lava. At this distance, none of the flame demon's attacks can reach them. He immediately raises his bow to begin the counterattack. He fires shot after shot at the roaring demon below, who can do nothing but howl in a display of pure, helpless rage. The boss smashes the lava around him, sending it flying everywhere, while the Batian Guild's private chat group absolutely explodes. One member demands to know what kind of insane damage that was, shocked that a full health warrior could be one-shot so easily. They wonder if the great god Shuangbiao can actually win, noting that he is still alive and currently whittling the boss down. With all his buffs fully activated, the real performance finally begins. Yahello offers a final blessing, her light guard shielding him as she prays for his success, and he promises not to fail. Just as Yahello manages to cast a resurrection state on him, the flame demon unleashes a devastating, screen-wide ultimate attack. Having no defensive skills left to protect herself, Yahello's health is instantly wiped out, leaving her fallen on the battlefield. However, her sacrifice buys him a precious window of opportunity, allowing him to weave through the air like a ghost. Laurent is now acting like a cornered, enraged lion, but despite the ferocity of his strikes, the demon's attacks begin to falter. The boss can no longer land a single hit, and as Shuangbiao maintains his flexible positioning, Laurent's health steadily begins to wither away. Finally, the boss reaches the execution threshold, and without a moment's hesitation, Shuangbiao charges up and delivers the final, decisive blow. The rest of the party, still waiting in their ghost forms, worry about his survival, but before they can even respawn, a sound rings out. A system notification echoes in their ears. Their party has successfully cleared the hell-level dungeon. Cleared? It seemed impossible, yet there were the names, Shuangbiao, Yahello, and the rest of the team. Batian Idao and the other players are credited with the first clear of the hell-level dungeon, Breath of the Demon. Their legendary feat will be recorded across the entire Starfield continent, and the global announcement leaves Batian Idao completely stunned. The group is in a daze. From the moment they engaged the boss to their wipe, barely 3 minutes had passed before the monster fell. To be honest, the speed at which he killed that terrifying final boss was almost absurd. Meanwhile, in a different, normal-level dungeon, the player Yushin Dangtian is leading his guild's elite squad through a fierce battle against their own final boss. Unlike the hell-level version, the normal boss stands on a simple, flat plane, and its attributes are weaker by a massive margin. As long as they manage the aggro properly, the difficulty isn't actually that high. His teammate remarks that the first clear is surely theirs. Yushin Dangtian nods in agreement, a confident, slightly smug smile spreading across his long face. He assumes that fool Batian Idao is still struggling somewhere, likely still licking his wounds from a failed attempt. We see the names flash across the screen: Shuangbiao, Guanjia Ijin Shuangbiao, and the Batian Idao Guild. They had achieved the first clear of the Breath of the Demon. Nearby, a guild member suddenly freezes in shock. His eyes widen as he shouts at the top of his lungs, calling out to his leader. He screams that they didn't just clear any dungeon, they cleared the hell-level version. The realization that it was a hell-level clear sends a shockwave through the entire group. The elite team members, still mid-combat, are so stunned that their coordination instantly falters. Their movements slow by a fraction of a second, and the raging boss seizes the moment to wipe out several fragile players. With a backhand strike, the boss crushes their frontline warriors, the scene spirals out of control, and the team is quickly annihilated. Back at the dungeon entrance, Yushin Dengtian is livid, his hand gripping a teammate's face while his own expression turns grim. He snarls, asking who gave them permission to shout so loud, while the terrified member begs for mercy through the pain. A notification chimes. Shuangbiao has slain the flame demon, Calder, though he earns 0 experience. He simply curls his lip. It seems that after a certain point, one can only continue gaining experience after completing the novice trial and entering the main city. He remains here for 2 reasons: the rewards for the first clear and a certain secret he's been chasing. He is looking for the hidden golden chest of the novice village. As the group reappears at the entrance, he checks the loot. After glancing at the blue-tier gear, he sets aside 1 piece of gold equipment and 4 pieces of silver equipment. He sells those to Batian Yidao, keeping 2 specific items for himself, starting with the gold-grade flame boots. These level 10 boots allow him to activate a flame path, leaving a trail of fire wherever he moves for 10 seconds. Any enemy unfortunate enough to step onto this path will suffer 50 points of burning damage every single second. With a 1-hour cooldown, they are quite the prize. Next, he examines the gold-grade Hellstone necklace. It grants 50 extra mana, 20 resistance, and boosts his mana recovery speed by 20%. The necklace also features an active skill called Hellfire Ring, which consumes 30% of his maximum mana. It grants a defensive fire shield that temporarily boosts resistance by 100 points and blocks 100 points of range damage. The shield lasts until it shatters. Nearby, Batian Yidao expresses his deep gratitude to Shuangbiao, noting they almost lost the kill. He mentions the Yushin Bao Guild was closing in, but Shuangbiao simply dismisses it as a fair trade between them. After saying a few words to Yunayo, our protagonist decides to log off, but not before checking the level rankings. We see that he still holds the top spot, while Yunayo has secured 2nd place thanks to the experience gained by following him. She has already reached level 9. In 3rd place is Yueying, the young man who also spent some time training under him. Yueying has reached level 8. Taking off his helmet, Shuangbiao picks up his phone to check his bank balance. When he sees a 7-figure balance staring back at him, a genuine smile finally spreads across his face. Without hesitation, he spends 990,000 to pre-order a high-end gaming pod online. Unlike a standard helmet, the gaming pod allows for 2 extra hours of play, which, for most players, just means more experience. But for him, those 2 extra hours represent a massive opportunity to stack his talent even further. He couldn't afford it before, but now that he has the funds, he isn't about to waste such a golden opportunity. The staff is remarkably efficient. Not long after he finishes his meal, the installers arrive at his door. An hour later, the gaming pod is ready. With the new setup complete, he can finally return to the world of the game. Upon logging back in, we see him approach the village chief, who greets him warmly, noting his return. Shuangbiao states his intent to take the novice trial, and the chief asks what level of difficulty he wishes to attempt. The old man warns him that the results of this trial will directly influence his entire path of growth in the future. He is told to choose carefully as red warning text flashes across the screen. A bit dramatic, perhaps, but the stakes are high. Naturally, he isn't bothered by the warnings at all. He simply focuses his attention on the selection panel that pops up. The hell difficulty is truly daunting, featuring monsters with 6,400% health and 300% to all attributes. When he calmly selects this hell difficulty, the village chief's cheerful expression instantly vanishes, replaced by a look of pure shock. The old man urges him to reconsider, but Shuangbiao remains firm, stating he has already made up his mind. Seeing his unwavering determination, the chief stops arguing and simply offers a final wish of good luck to the young man. A pale blue teleportation circle rises beneath his feet, and in the next heartbeat, his figure vanishes from the village entirely. With a flash of light, we find him standing in a dimly lit underground plaza, the air heavy with a sense of foreboding. The plaza is massive, roughly the size of 2 football fields, and he stands at the very edge as the game notifications begin to chime. The system announces that the player Shuangbiao is now beginning the hell level trial, and his opponent is revealed. He is to face the Berserker Growl. As the voice fades, the Berserker on the opposite side of the plaza suddenly stirs. Growl snaps his eyes open, his blood-red pupils locking onto our protagonist with terrifying intensity. The Berserker asks if he is the challenger, appearing as a level 10 boss with a truly menacing presence. His skills include Berserk Rage, Demon God's Bloodlust, and Blood Stimulation, a lethal combination, to be sure. Even though he had prepared himself mentally, seeing Growl's actual stats in person makes him swallow hard in realization. The attributes are indeed terrifying, yet he believes his plan can still work, even if his heart is racing right now. Fortunately, he remembers forum posts from his past life that detailed Growl's stats and, more importantly, his weaknesses. Researchers had discovered that the Berserker lacks any effective long-range attacks, making him vulnerable to a specific strategy. The most effective way to handle him is to stay out of reach, ideally by taking to the sky, where he cannot follow. This is exactly why he needed the angel's will. But as he stands there for a moment, a blood-red sword wave suddenly streaks toward his face. He snaps back to reality just in time, narrowly dodging the lethal energy as it whistles past him. The sword chi carves a massive, jagged gash into the stone wall behind him, and he looks up to see the battle has truly begun. The berserker Growl plants his greatsword firmly in front of him, his face twisted with a look of pure rage. He roars that facing the great Lord Growl is no small matter, and he clearly doesn't appreciate being ignored. How dare he be so distracted? With a solemn expression, the protagonist feels the power of the angels will manifest behind him. The spectral wings shimmer, and his body rapidly ascends until he reaches the very ceiling of the underground plaza. By now, Growl has fully awakened his bloodlust and begins charging toward the young man's last known position. But thanks to the angel's will, our hero is already safely airborne, creating a vertical gap of over 50 meters. He raises his weapon and fires a single strike, dealing over 30,000 points of damage in an instant. After all his hard work lately, his passive talent has stacked to a staggering 31,000 points. The damage hitting the berserker is quite impressive, so he continues to draw his bow with steady confidence. He unleashes a rain of swords from above, but Growl casually deflects them all with a single wave of sword chi. The boss mocks him, calling him a mere bug and daring him to show whatever other tricks he might have. He draws his bow once more, sending another torrential rain of blades down toward the plaza floor. Yet again, Growl sweeps his sword with effortless strength, swatting the attack aside while calling him a pest. The berserker stands his ground, taunting the young man to give him everything he's got. Seeing that standard attacks aren't enough, he immediately activates Bardic Revelry, boosting his attack speed by 200%. He fires a relentless barrage, forcing Growl to hold his massive sword horizontally to block the incoming storm. Despite the boss's best efforts, several arrows find their mark, slowly chipping away at that massive health pool. Growl simply laughs it off, asking if he is merely trying to give the great Lord Growl a light scratch. Our protagonist remains silent and cold, his hands moving so fast that the bowstring becomes a blurred afterimage. A dense, suffocating rain of arrows pours down, though Growl continues to parry them with a few casual swings. Growl decides he has finished playing games and activates his frenzy ability. With a deafening roar that shakes the very foundations, the berserker enters a state of pure rage. We see our hero's expression turn grim as he watches Growl swing his massive blade. A wave of sword chi, spanning the entire width of the underground plaza, hurtles toward him, forcing a desperate dodge. The strike shatters the stone wall behind him instantly, leaving him shaken by the sheer destructive force. He can hardly believe the power behind those swings as Growl continues to lash out repeatedly. Countless blood-red energy waves surge toward him, forcing him to flap his wings frantically to stay alive. He looks like a bird caught in a storm, desperately weaving through the dense thicket of lethal projectiles. Each time a strike hits the surrounding stone, a thunderous boom echoes throughout the chamber. Amused by this frantic display, Growl mocks him, asking if the little bug has already reached his limit. The boss assumes it's over, but our protagonist slowly emerges from the settling dust and rubble. He calmly brushes the debris from his clothes, his voice dropping to a cold, steady tone. He tells the giant it is time to witness his true power, a claim Growl dismisses as mere nonsense. Then, with a sudden shout, he calls upon the name of the moon goddess. A silver-white magic circle envelopes him as his angelic wings fold inward to protect his body. He is encased in a shimmering silver cocoon for a brief moment before it bursts into brilliant points of light. And just like that, the real game is finally ready to begin. This is the moon goddess form, a transformation unlocked only by combining his legendary bow and wings. It is his ultimate trump card as a regressor, as he calls upon the spirits of the moon to answer him. This is the exclusive skill of the moon goddess descent, and things are about to get very interesting. This Sunder skill carries a heavy weight, dealing true damage equal to 200% of his own attack power. It also shaves off an additional eighth of the enemy's total health as the moon arrow streaks toward Growl. Growl quickly raises his massive greatsword to block, and we see the moon blade collide with the heavy steel. The impact triggers a terrifying shockwave, and as the smoke clears, Growl's health bar has plummeted by 3/4. Even the mighty Growl seems shaken by this, prompting our hero to ask what's wrong with the great Lord Growl. He notes that the boss doesn't seem so tough after all, though Growl admits the bug has some actual skill. However, the giant asks if he truly believes such a meager effort is enough to defeat him. After all, Prince Growl is the legendary Berserker Growl, a title he earned through blood and fury. He repeats the sentiment, acknowledging the boy's strength while mocking the idea that this fight is over. To be honest, the prince seems quite proud of his reputation as the ultimate berserker. Our hero's expression turns solemn as a pillar of red light shoots toward the sky, and he begins to draw his bow once more. He fires another moon blade, but as the light dissipates, a completely new form stands before us. It seems he isn't the only one with a second phase, a classic trope, but a dangerous one nonetheless. This is Growl's passive skill, Demon God's Blood Rage, which triggers once he has taken a certain amount of damage. He transforms into a demon god just as the fired blade is about to strike him. Growl slams his great sword into the ground, and immediately, a pillar of flame erupts toward the heavens. The moonblade is deflected instantly by the flames, and seeing this, our hero realizes the boss has become even harder to handle. He decides to settle the match with his next move, raising the moon-singing longbow high into the air. He pulls back the bowstring with everything he has, beginning a deep and powerful charge. He calls upon the spirits of the moon, commanding them to take the form of a divine dragon. He commands the spirits to devour the enemy before him, focusing every ounce of his energy into a powerful, chanting charge. A divine dragon, condensed from the very essence of the moon, streaks forward as Growl drops to one knee in visible concern. The giant begins to recite an ancient, forbidden incantation, his voice trembling with a mix of desperation and rage. He cries out to his father god, pleading for the strength to survive this onslaught. We see Growl hoist his massive greatsword as a blood-red sword chi erupts violently from the ground beneath him. With a desperate roar, Growl swings forward, and the crimson energy collides head-on with the radiant lunar dragon. A storm of pure energy instantly sweeps across the entire underground plaza, shaking the very foundations of the ruins. The dragon swallows the sword chi, transforming into a red and white shockwave that kicks up a thick, blinding cloud of dust. As the smoke finally clears, we see Growl collapsed on the ground, letting out a final, piteous wail of defeat. He cries out that he cannot accept this end, which, to be honest, is a bit late for complaints. Growl's health bar finally hits 0, and his body dissolves into points of light, leaving behind a crown shimmering with 7-colored brilliance. Our hero descends gracefully from the air, and with a flash of light, his moon god state finally reaches its end. He dons his leather armor once more, but just as he prepares to inspect his loot, a system announcement rings in his ears. The announcement rang out. The player had achieved a double victory with a single strike, becoming the first to ever pass the Hell-level novice trial. He is awarded the unique title Star of Hope, a message that repeats 3 times across the world for everyone to hear. This news ignites a fresh wave of heated discussion among the players, who wonder how a mere newbie trial could offer such rewards. The prizes are staggering: a choice of a hidden profession, a piece of growth equipment, and even a skill of his choosing. Most players couldn't even dream of such rewards, and many begin to wonder just how powerful this Shuangbiao truly is. Even the high-ranking player Yushin Dangtian looks on with a grim expression, staring at the name of this rising star. He wonders if such a person can truly be destroyed, just as another system chime announces the completion of the trial. The system informs him that his free attribute points from leveling up will now be quadrupled, and his reality projection rate will increase to 10%. He is stunned. The projection feature has actually been activated ahead of schedule. As a regressor, no one understands the weight of this early activation better than he does. The projection rate means that every ounce of power a player gains within Wish will eventually manifest in the real world. He remembers clearly that as soon as the first person reached the projection threshold, monsters from the game began appearing in reality. He wonders if his early projection will alter the fate of the real world, but since he cannot control it, he reaches a simple conclusion. The only path forward is to become even stronger. Shifting his focus, his gaze falls upon the crown dropped by Growl. It is the crown of the Titan God King, a growth-type item with no level requirement, featuring the skill, Heart of the Titan. The stats are impressive, granting a 10% increase to both maximum health and health regeneration speed. There are 4 more locked skills remaining. After reading the description, he feels a surge of genuine excitement. Growth-type equipment is incredibly rare, so without a moment's hesitation, he removes his old demon collar. He replaces it with the crown of the Titan God King, and his attributes skyrocket instantly. He quickly opens his character status panel to compare his new power to when he was still wearing the demon collar. His health has increased by nearly 1,000 points, and his defense has roughly doubled. To be honest, he's becoming a bit of a monster. At this stage, most players wouldn't even be able to break through his defense. The system then asks if he wishes to hide the equipment's appearance. He chooses to hide it, and once the crown is invisible, he teleports out of the trial grounds. Upon exiting the trial, the first thing he sees is the village chief, whose eyes are nearly bulging out of his head. Our hero just grins. He tells the chief that he passed the trial, causing the old man to snap out of his daze and look at him with a complex expression. The chief admits he never expected to see such a talented young hero in his lifetime. He confesses that he had underestimated the young man, and as he speaks, a new light appears in the village chief's eyes. In that moment, a flicker of light called hope appeared in the chief's eyes. Since that was the case, he asked our hero for a favor. Village Chief Ding of Novice Village 2333 then made a request. The system asks if he will accept the Mythic Grade Chain quest, west of the Star Plane. He pauses for a moment. In his previous life, this specific mythic quest was claimed by the only person who had ever cleared The nightmare level trial. That man became the strongest player in Star playing. According to him, he had to talk his ears off just to coax the quest out of the chief. Meanwhile, for our hero, the chief is the one pleading for help. Hell level and nightmare level rewards are worlds apart. He accepts. After making his choice, the chief speaks again, claiming he knew he hadn't misjudged the young man's character. He tells him that he is indeed a trustworthy person. Then, he reveals a secret. Actually, the original mission of their village was to suppress a slumbering demon hidden deep below. Even today, the chief can still hear that dark heartbeat echoing from beneath the earth. Over thousands of years, the strength of the seal has gradually weakened, and the danger has grown. The demon is waking up and is on the verge of breaking the seal. Earlier, when he was sent west, the flame demon he sealed was actually just a byproduct of the demon's breath polluting the volcanic lava. As the village chief continues his narration, the game's system notifications begin to chime rapidly. The chief of Novice Village 2333 is officially issuing the mythic grade chain quest to him. Part 1 is titled The Sealed Demon. He is asked if he will accept the task from Chief Ding. The prompt repeats, emphasizing the weight of this mythic grade chain quest, The Sealed Demon. The description is simple. Defeat the demon and force it back into a deep slumber. He doesn't hesitate. He accepts the task once more. The chief hands him a token, which will guide him into the seal's interior. He obtains the seal key, a quest item whose description hums with a faint, ancient energy. After using it at a specific location in Novice Village 2333, he can enter the sealed space. He bids farewell to the chief. Our hero begins walking toward the coordinates specified by the key. The village isn't large, so it only takes a moment. He soon arrives at the center of the village, where a faceless statue stands tall. Around it, quite a few players have gathered. They are busy setting up stalls to sell their equipment and materials, oblivious to the secret beneath their feet. A notification confirms he has reached the target location. He is asked if he wishes to use the key to enter. He selects yes. As the choice is made, a blue light envelopes his body. In the next second, he vanishes completely from the spot. Nearby players blink in confusion, wondering if that man just disappeared. But in this world, that isn't so strange. They assume he simply used a teleportation scroll. Meanwhile, after a flash of white light, he finds himself elsewhere. He stands before a dark underground passage. The walls are embedded with glowing stones, casting a dim, eerie light. It is these faint light sources that keep the tunnel from being pitch black. We see the path leads steadily downward. The air blowing toward him gradually grows warmer. After walking for what feels like an eternity, the space suddenly opens up. A massive underground plaza appears before him. Surrounding the area is a faint, golden curtain of light. This barrier acts as a shroud, separating the interior from the outside world. Right in the very center of the plaza, there sits a colossal cage, and inside that cage, a thin, gaunt figure is being held captive. 3 spears, radiating a soft golden light, are thrust through its body, pinning it ruthlessly to the ground. The figure is held firmly in place. He wonders if this truly is the sealed demon. At that moment, the thin figure seems to sense his presence and slowly lifts its head. When he sees its face, he freezes in surprise. In his mind, a demon should be a ferocious creature with horns and a terrifying visage. But this person has no such traits. To be honest, they don't look like a demon at all. No monstrous face, and certainly no horns to be seen. The figure speaks, his voice raspy as he calls out, "This is clearly a human. You lapdogs. You really are dedicated, aren't you? Over 1,000 years have passed, yet you still haven't forgotten." He mentions the orders left by their master. As our hero stands there dazed, the man continues talking to himself. "You don't carry the scent of those lapdogs," the captive observes, his eyes narrowing in the dim light. "You are a new descendant. Yes, that's it. You are not one of those dogs." He repeats it as if trying to convince himself. "You are a descendant. Yes, you aren't one of them. You are a descendant," he whispers once more, the weight of the word hanging heavy in the air. The thought that the people of this star have finally welcomed a descendant again seems to overwhelm him. "A descendant," he breathes out, his voice trembling with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "Lord Descendant," he mutters. These words cause a sudden, violent storm of emotion to rise within our hero's heart. The term descendant is one he heard countless times in his past life. It was never just a simple title. Only the original inhabitants of this world, the Xingyuan people, would ever address players in such a specific way. This means the person before him isn't a demon at all, but a true Xingyuan native, which is quite a shock. But why would the village chief claim a demon was sealed here? He begins to wonder if he has been misled. His memories begin to churn, and deep in a forgotten corner of his mind, he unearths an old rumor. Legend says that in a certain secret realm, there is a stone tablet recording an event from 10,000 years ago. It was a catastrophe that changed the fate of the entire Xingyuan continent, a tragedy that can be summarized in 8 words: foreign invasion and the total extinction of a race. He recalls everything he knew about the Xingyuan people. In his past life, they were only ever encountered in secret realms or dungeons. In the outside world, there were none. And every Xingyuan person ever met was doing the same thing, helping players. It was a universal truth among them. Even after the monsters descended into reality, some Xingyuan people appeared to help the players defend their world. As players used to say in his past life, you could doubt an NPC, but never a Xingyuan native. But that raises a question. Was his mythic quest really asking him to kill a member of a friendly faction? To be sure, he decided to check the other's attributes. It was the only way to know for certain. He activated his identification skill, peering through the interface to see the truth behind the man. Embrace of Red Fire, Demon Valley Rain, Troll's Body. But before he could finish reading the panel, Fanlore spoke up, his voice dripping with a sudden, weary disappointment. What a pity, he sighed. You are merely a weak, unclassed beginner, the captive noted. You are far too fragile. He demanded to speak with a powerhouse of the foreign race, refusing to talk to someone so weak. Our hero blinked in surprise. It seemed he was being looked down upon. With a cold smirk, he raised his hand and unleashed a double-shot heavy sword strike. The exaggerated damage numbers caused Fanlore's eyes to nearly pop out of his head, and he wasn't done yet. Activating Silver Moon Carnival, he aimed right for Fanlore's face and began a relentless barrage of arrows. By the time Fanlore recovered from his initial shock, over a dozen wooden arrows were already sticking out of his face. Stop this at once, he roared. How dare you treat a great archmage with such disrespect? But his pride didn't last long. Little brother, please, stop shooting. Just stop. He pleaded that his face couldn't hold any more arrows. To be honest, he looked like he was about to cry. In all his long years, he had never seen an unclassed beginner deal this kind of terrifying damage. Seeing Fanlore's face covered in a thicket of arrows, our hero finally felt he had vented his frustration. All right then, he said calmly. Go ahead and speak. I'm listening. Give me a moment to recover, Fanlore sobbed. Heaven only knows how a great archmage ended up in this state. We see just how much he had been tormented, his health bar barely hovering at 1/5. It was a mistake. I never imagined you possessed such power, Fanlore admitted, offering a sincere apology for his earlier rudeness. Our hero cut him off, demanding the truth about the village chief and the Xingyuan people. No more nonsense. Who was actually lying? Fanlore looked at the young man and spoke with a heavy gravity. You are currently blinded by that secret medicine. Discard it, and only then will you see the truth. Li Wenyan hesitated for only a moment before tossing the medicine from his inventory. As soon as it hit the ground, Fanlore's attribute panel underwent a sudden transformation, revealing him as the Red Fire Archmage of the Xingyuan Ancient Rune. He was level 10, possessing skills like the Embrace of Red Fire, Xingyuan Ancient Tongue, and the Body of Fire Spirit. The stats remained the same, but the names of the skills had changed. This, finally, was his true identity. It seems you've glimpsed the truth, Fanlore noted. The one who gave you that medicine. He is likely a descendant of the Guardians. He asked you to defeat me, didn't he? The mage conceded that the choice was clever. With our hero's strength, he truly could have been defeated. However, Fanlore added, he and your kind, the descendants, are simply not on the same path. He assumed the boy wouldn't understand, but Li Wenyan knew. Once, they were the masters of the Xingyuan continent. They simply failed to stop the Great Invasion. At those words, Fanlore froze in complete shock. He stared directly at the young man, clearly wondering how a mere beginner could know such ancient history. A genuine smile finally crossed his face. It seemed the chance for his people to return had finally arrived. Young man, since you know the history of those invaders, you must understand what needs to be done. He requested that the original glory of the Xingyuan continent be restored. Suddenly, a notification chimed. The Red Fire Archmage had issued a mythic grade chain quest, Restore Xingyuan. Our hero paused, deep in thought. Yet another mythic grade chain quest. To be honest, tasks of this caliber were things he had only ever seen discussed on the forums. Now that they were appearing before him one after another, he couldn't help but wonder if this was simply the standard treatment for a top-tier player. He hesitated, wondering if accepting this new quest meant he would have to abandon the one he was already on. Theoretically, yes, but Fanlore claimed he could allow both to be completed at once. Our hero naturally asked how such a thing was possible. The answer was startlingly simple. He had to kill the mage. Yes, just like that. As Fanlore spoke those words, a smile of pure relief spread across his face, as if he were finally being set free. It was as if he were discussing something that didn't involve his own life at all. Li Wenyan was moved, asking why he would go so far. Fanlore's smile faded into a look of deep remembrance. He whispered that it was because of hope, something he hadn't felt in many years. He saw in the young man the only spark of hope remaining, and so he was willing to use his own life to give him a helping hand. His only request was that when the boy gained the power, he would restore the Xingyuan continent. Li Wenyan watched him, remaining silent for a long time. Finally, he gave a solemn nod, promising to fulfill the request. Fanlore simply offered a quiet word of thanks. The mage told him this would be his final assistance. As the words left his lips, something began to shift within Fanlore's body. A faint, flickering flame suddenly drifted out from him, passing through the cage and the pale gold shield until it reached our hero. Under his astonished gaze, the spark plunged directly into his chest. We see the notification. He had obtained Fanlore's source fire. This unlocked the qualifications for general and fire magic, while increasing his mana by 500. He was, understandably, completely stunned. A magic archer? It turned out that what Fanlore had actually gifted him was the fundamental ability to learn magic. Though it was limited to general and fire spells, it was more than enough for an archer, especially the devastating power of fire. Fanlore had truly delivered an incredible parting gift, and we can see that, deep down, Li Wanyan was thrilled. The mage urged him to strike now, explaining that without his source fire, he wouldn't be able to hold on much longer anyway. Looking closely, we see that the once spirited Fanlore had already begun to wither, his body becoming as dry and frail as a husk. Looking at his attributes, they had dropped significantly. Fanlore, the Crimson Flame Archmage, was now on the very brink of death. At this moment, Fanlore's stats were barely higher than those of a low-level wild monster. To be honest, it was a tragic sight. It was clear that he had truly reached the end of his rope. Seeing this, Li Wanyan didn't hesitate any longer. He raised his sword and, with a single strike, put an end to Fanlore's suffering. The game notification for Nebula's Legacy appeared, but we can see that he felt no joy in completing the task. He looked at the quest prompt Fanlore had left behind, Restore the Nebula Continent, Part 1. The objective was to travel to the catacombs of the Bellowin Mountains and find a dark elf named Float. He was familiar with the Bellowin Mountains, of course. They were located to the southeast of Evernight City. Since Evernight was one of the game's 8 major capital cities, it seemed he would have to head there first. After leaving the starting village, players can bind to a major city as their respawn point. He closed the quest interface. He picked up the secret medicine from the ground. With Fanlore gone, there was no reason to stay here. With a single thought, the medicine teleported him instantly, and when he reappeared, he was back in front of that nameless statue. It was time to hand in the quest. Returning to the village chief, he couldn't help but view the old man with a bit of suspicion. However, the chief showed no signs of anything unusual, greeting him warmly as a young man. The chief praised him as a powerful warrior for completing the mythic-grade quest, Nebula's Legacy. As a reward, he received the Holy Light Fountain, which greatly buffs holy items while weakening evil creatures. It seemed like a valuable prize, but as soon as he took it, the soulbound angel wings suddenly reacted. A surge of memory flooded his mind, and he could clearly feel the angel wings evolving at an incredible speed. By the time the Holy Light Fountain was consumed, the wings, which originally had 2 feathers, had grown to 4. Their power had effectively doubled. For wings, however, were perhaps a bit too conspicuous for his liking. He decided it was better to maintain their original form for now. Meanwhile, we see the second part of the Mythic Chain quest has been updated. The objective, Nebula's Legacy Part 2, was to head to Holy Light City and find High Priest Arenbo for further guidance. It seemed he had finally exhausted all the secrets of the starting village. It was time to move on to a major city. Checking his friend list, he noticed that Yun Nayo and Yuying hadn't logged on yet. They were likely still busy. He hoped they would complete the high-difficulty novice trials. After all, as one of the top 3 healers in his past life, he didn't mind offering a bit of casual kindness to someone like Yun Nayo. As for Yuying, well, that was purely because the man was so efficient at gathering loot. Soon, he arrived at the starting village's teleportation circle. After selecting his destination, his figure flickered and vanished from the village. To be honest, it was a clean exit. The surrounding players were stunned by the sight, whispering that he must be a top-tier expert with high-level gear. They marveled at how he was already level 10, sparking a sudden, frantic desire among the crowd to reach the main city themselves. Some even joked about the legendary entertainment districts waiting for them. Yes, the motivation of the masses is often quite simple. A system prompt appeared, teleporting to Evernight City. This will be bound as your primary respawn point. He confirmed the travel. A second later, he appeared in Evernight City, which was a stark contrast to the bustling starting village. The vast city felt cold and deserted. Aside from the occasional NPC guards patrolling the cobblestone streets, there were only a few residents wandering about. After a short walk, he stood before a massive, imposing building. This was the Professionals Guild, the place where every player must go for their class change. But he wasn't here for that. Since he possessed a hidden class selection scroll, he had no intention of settling for a common, ordinary profession. He had come specifically to learn fire magic, knowing well that many fire spells possess devastating area of effect capabilities. With a few of those, he wouldn't have to worry about his talent stacking too slowly. He politely requested to learn magic from the instructor. The instructor noted he could learn as long as he met the requirements. His eyes lit up the moment he saw the Fire Cyclone spell. That skill was the bread and butter for fire mages when it came to clearing mobs, standing as one of the best spells in existence. It was the perfect choice for his daily monster hunting needs, so he decided right then and there to learn it. When he informed the magic instructor of his choice, the man looked at him with pure confusion, noting he wasn't a mage. "You're an archer," the instructor scoffed. "What business do you have coming to me for lessons?" He asked if our protagonist had even checked the requirements for Fire Cyclone. It required 300 mana, after all. The instructor shooed him away, telling him not to cause trouble. To be honest, the man's patience was non-existent. We see that mages can be quite temperamental, but as a regressor, he was already well acquainted with their difficult personalities. Instead of getting angry, he simply displayed his mana stats to the instructor. The man's eyes widened at the sight. "You're a fist magic archer? And your mana, it actually meets the requirement." The instructor huffed in disbelief. He insisted it was still useless, claiming that only the mage class could learn magic. It was, supposedly, an iron rule. Our protagonist didn't want to hear it and demanded the skill. Seeing his persistence, the instructor finally gave in. He followed the system's procedure and taught him Fire Cyclone. It was an instant cast spell, which is always a plus. It summoned a massive fire cyclone 20 meters wide for 10 seconds. He quickly did the math on the cooldown. With his current stats, it would deal over 6,000 damage per second, totaling 65,000 over its full duration. A terrifying power to unleash every 3 seconds. With his game time nearly up, he decided to log off for the day. As he sat up in his gaming pod, he prepared to start his day, but he suddenly realized something felt different. His eyesight, which had suffered from years of staring at screens, had suddenly become incredibly sharp and clear. Even the distant advertisements on buildings outside his window were perfectly legible. And then, it finally clicked. He remembered one of the specific rewards he had earned for completing the high-difficulty novice trials. 10% of his in-game strength had been projected into the real world. A life-changing development, to say the least. His current progress had already far surpassed the top 10 players from his previous life. He wondered how much this early projection of abilities would affect the future. After moving around for a bit, his stomach betrayed him with a loud growl. The moment he stepped out of his door, he saw his landlady, Lina, coming downstairs in a light camisole. She asked if he was heading out for a meal. He admitted he'd just woken up from the game and was starving. She told him to follow her for something delicious. On the way home after dinner, we see flashing police lights and a crowd gathered in front of the neighborhood. He heard rumors that a stray cat had slashed someone's throat, killing them instantly. To be honest, that sounded impossible. He wondered if this was caused by the game's projection. After carrying Lina's mini shopping bags to her room, he finally headed home. Even a shopping expert like Lina felt a bit exhausted after a full day out. After showering, Lina came into the living room wrapped in a towel, intending to organize the messy piles of bags. Suddenly, a strange noise caught her attention. She looked toward the curtains, where the sound was coming from. She wondered why there would be a cat's meow in her house, and the news about the killer stray flashed through her mind. Before Lina could even pull the curtains back, a dark shadow lunged out from the gap behind the fabric. He heard the commotion and rushed over, asking what happened. She screamed for help, begging him to open the door. The power of his furious punch was absolutely world-shattering for a mere stray cat. He even gained a point of experience. He didn't have time to notice the system notification. He wanted to check if she was safe, but he suddenly froze. Lina suddenly sprang up and hugged him tightly, completely ignoring the fact that her towel was slipping off. She was terrified. He told her not to be afraid. His body stiffened, but he eventually held the trembling Lina in his arms. Back at his place, Lina sat in a silk nightgown, sipping a glass of warm water. He called out to her softly. He assured her the danger had passed and promised to find someone to fix her door tomorrow. She said it was fine. She whispered that the stray cat had been like a fierce tiger, and without him, she would have been in grave danger. In his previous life, the first monster manifestation had occurred somewhere else in the sprawling metropolis of Modu. But this time, it happened right here. He wondered if his being the first to project his game abilities had caused this shift. He suggested that Lina sleep in his room for the night while he took the sofa outside. To be honest, it was the least he could do. After seeing Lina safely into the bedroom, he didn't head for the couch, but climbed directly into his gaming pod instead. With a flash of light, we returned to the professional guild in Evernight City, where he felt an urgent need to increase his power. One of the fastest ways to grow stronger was a class change, so he opened his hidden class selection scroll. His gaze swept across the various hidden classes, Holy Sword of Light, Dark Knight Marksman, and many others. He considered the Wild Beast Hunter, but suddenly, the description of a specific hidden class caught his eye, the Heaven-Blessed Marksman. This was a profession favored by the heavens themselves. Its attacks were unavoidable, and it possessed incredible long-range scouting abilities. It felt as though it were tailor-made for him, so he chose to transition into the unique hidden class of Heaven-Blessed Marksman. Following his decision, a new quest appeared in his log. The requirements for the Heaven-Blessed Marksman were quite specific. He needed to kill 5 gold-rank bosses of his level or higher and collect 1,000 feathers from the Azure Petrels. Finally, he had to clear the 10th floor of the hero's tower. Looking at these 3 conditions, his eyelids began to twitch. After thinking it over carefully, he decided that collecting the Azure Petrel feathers would likely be the easiest task for now. After stocking up on health and mana potions within Evernight City, he picked a direction and headed out beyond the walls. We see him now frantically grinding his passive talents. His Fire Cyclone had a massive area of effect and a very short cooldown. As he soared through the air, he dropped a Fire Cyclone into the clusters of monsters below every 3 seconds. He continued circling Evernight City, raining down fire until his passive stacks surpassed 50,000. A perfectly ordinary afternoon of grinding, really. It was then that he received a message from Yunayo, informing him that both siblings had completed their hard-level trials. After sending a quick message of congratulations, he closed the chat window, only for a sudden system notification to ring in his ears. It announced that the player Yushin Dangtian was the very first in the entire server to complete a class change. He chuckled, noting that the big guilds certainly moved fast, though he couldn't help but check the rankings to see the current state of things. His own top spot had indeed been taken by Yushin Dangtian, while most other players were still sitting at level 10, waiting to promote. The Yushin Guild had already officially designated Xinguang City as their primary base of operations. As soon as the news broke, the world chat began scrolling frantically with players falling over themselves to flatter the powerful guild. This only deepened the smile on Yushin Dantian's face as he basked in his success, though he soon turned to his guild members with a question. He wanted to know if they had managed to get in touch with that player, Doubleshot, yet. The subordinate admitted that the man had blocked all friend requests, making it impossible for them to reach him at all. Calling them useless for failing such a simple task, the leader ordered that if anyone encountered Doubleshot, they were to act immediately. The first priority was to invite him to join the guild and bring him under their banner. However, if he refused the offer, he was to be blacklisted and treated as an enemy without hesitation. Yushin Dangtian wanted to see how this mysterious archer would fare against him, and his subordinates quickly bowed in agreement. Meanwhile, our protagonist looked at his passive stacks, which had reached a staggering 150,000, and decided it was time to start his quest. During his earlier grinding session, he had finally managed to find 2 pieces of equipment he was missing, a helmet and some leggings. The first was the Inkhorn Spirit Helmet, a silver-grade item suited for his current level. Crafted from an antelope skull, its passive effect reduced all incoming head damage by an additional 5%. The second piece was the Wind Demon Wolfskin Pants, also of silver grade, and requiring level 10 to equip. These leggings granted him the active skill Wolf Wind Blade, allowing him to fire a gust of wind that dealt 300 points of damage. It had a range of 100 meters and a 10-second cooldown, a modest but useful addition to his growing arsenal. After hiding the appearance of his new equipment, our protagonist checked his map and began flying toward the eastern side of Evernight City. A short while later, a vast, azure horizon finally came into view as he reached the edge of the sea. Before him, the silhouettes of large blue sea birds appeared, the azure petrels, formidable level 30 creatures. Equipped with skills like Swallow Dive and Sea Surge, these monsters were typical glass cannons for their level. While their health and defense were nothing special, their true strength lay in their annoying, high-speed movements. But for him, they didn't pose much of a challenge at all, and he calmly activated his Fire Cyclone skill. Massive flocks of azure petrels perished within the swirling flames, unable to even launch a single counterattack against him. The only problem was the abysmal drop rate for feathers. He had to kill 10 birds just to obtain a single one. After another wave of birds fell, he gathered the remaining loot, bringing his total count to 575 feathers. By this point, he had cleared out every bird in the vicinity, leaving him with nothing to do but wait for the system to respawn them. With a bit of free time on his hands, he prepared to head elsewhere to continue stacking his passive talents on other monsters. Suddenly, he spotted a motionless figure hidden in the bushes below, and, curious, he flew down to land right in front of them. It was a wounded soldier, his lower body soaked in blood and his face as pale as a sheet of paper. It was clear that he didn't have much time left, but the man managed to gasp out the words, "Human, adventurer." The protagonist's sudden arrival had startled him, but upon realizing it was a fellow human, the soldier visibly relaxed. He begged the adventurer to deliver one last message, sensing that his own end was drawing near. A system chime rang out as Kamair, an Evernight City scout, offered a quest titled The Final Message. Naturally, he accepted. The quest revealed that Kamair had discovered a massive gathering of Sea Clan forces on a nearby island. It seemed they were planning an assault on Evernight City, and the message needed to reach the city lord immediately. The reward promised was generous, but the quest itself made him pause as memories of the past began to resurface. He recalled a major event from his past life, the Sea Clan's invasion of Evernight City, and without a second thought, he accepted the quest. "Thank you, adventurer," the scout whispered. "You must deliver this news to the city lord quickly so the city can prepare." With those final words, the soldier went silent, and our protagonist hoisted the man's body onto his shoulder to fly back toward Evernight City. He chose not to use a return scroll, as doing so would mean leaving the body behind, so he began the journey back on foot. As he traveled, he continued using Fire Cyclone to stack his passive talents, and by the time the gates of Evernight City appeared, his passive talent stacks had already reached a staggering 200,000. Upon arriving, he gently set the soldier's body down before the guards and explained the situation. Guided by the guards, he soon reached the city lord's manor, entering a vast and echoing great hall. There, seated upon a throne, a woman of heroic and elegant stature watched him with a calm, steady gaze. He was no stranger to this ruler. She was known to carry royal blood and went by the name Yilisi. In his previous life, after the game merged with reality, this city lord had successfully transitioned into the real world. She had led her soldiers to stand alongside humanity, helping them resist the relentless monster invasions. Due to her breathtaking beauty and immense power, she was widely known among humans as the Rose Queen. "Respected city lord," he began, "your soldier asked me to deliver a message to you with his final breath." He informed her that the Sea Clan was gathering their forces and that Evernight City had to prepare its defenses immediately. "So, those foul fish really do have designs on my city," Yilisi remarked, turning her attention back to the adventurer. "On behalf of Evernight City, I thank you for your aid. This is your reward," she said, reaching out. She handed him a shimmering badge, and a crisp system chime echoed in his ears. Yes, the best kind of sound. Within the jurisdiction of Evernight City, he could now command a small army of up to 100 soldiers. Furthermore, he was granted immunity from the city's laws, a realization that filled him with immense satisfaction. This was the legendary privileged item he remembered from his past life, capable of mobilizing level 60 NPCs to form a squad. It's safe to say that with this badge in hand, he was practically a high-ranking noble within Evernight City. After bidding farewell to City Lord Yahello, we see him head toward the tallest structure in the city, the Tower of Heroes. In each of the 8 major cities, a Tower of Heroes stands as a testament to strength and skill. Every player is granted 3 challenge attempts daily, though a successful run doesn't count against that limit. Having challenged the tower before, he felt quite confident in his current damage output as he approached the entrance. A large crowd of players had already gathered before this soaring spire that seemed to pierce the very clouds. Scanning the crowd, he spotted a familiar figure, someone he certainly hadn't expected to run into so soon. It was Batian Yidao, the vice president of the Batian Guild. Only then did he recall a crucial detail. In his previous life, the Batian Guild had indeed settled in Evernight City. Just then, Yidao noticed him as well. "What are you doing here?" Yidao asked. "I'm here for the tower, though no one has cleared the 2nd floor yet. The hero there is supposedly only level 11. He simply nodded, deciding to head inside and see for himself. As he pushed through the crowd to enter the tower, the onlookers began to whisper amongst themselves. To them, he looked utterly unremarkable. They scoffed at the idea of him challenging the 2nd floor, a dream, they called it. They waited eagerly to see him fail, but then, following a sudden flash of light, the scene shifted entirely. His figure materialized atop a massive arena, the air humming with a strange, expectant energy. The arena was vast, stretching out in every direction, and directly across from him, a new presence began to form. A dark, shadowy figure gradually took shape, clad in a suit of weathered, cyan-colored armor. An ancient helmet concealed the warrior's face, leaving only a pair of cold, indifferent eyes visible. This was the Storm Warrior. At level 10, this opponent possessed formidable skills, Storm Dash, Gale Wind, and the lethal Death Rift. As the very first guardian of the Tower of Heroes, he knew the Storm Warrior's attributes better than anyone. With just a single glance, he lost all interest and immediately drew his bow to loose an arrow. The Storm Warrior collapsed instantly without even a groan, while outside the tower, players were betting he wouldn't last a minute. After all, that was the Storm Warrior. Everyone knows that if he gets close, your game is essentially over. Suddenly, someone shouted to look at the board. It had only been 3 seconds, barely enough time to blink. The previous top player took 40 minutes, leading the crowd to wonder if this new record holder was even human. He had cleared the 1st floor in a staggering 13 seconds, and seeing this ranking, the gathered players practically started fuming. It felt like a cruel joke, considering the last person struggled for 40 minutes just to take down that first guardian. And yet, he finished it in 3 seconds. To be honest, it hardly seemed fair to the rest of them. A notification appeared congratulating him on defeating the 10th floor guardian, awarding him a skill enhancement scroll. Watching the 10th floor guardian dissipate, he finally breathed a sigh of relief and checked his class transfer requirements. With only one final step remaining in his quest, he had no intention of staying to challenge further floors. With a simple thought, he exited the tower, only to find countless burning gazes fixed directly upon him. The crowd erupted, calling him a god and cheering for his victory with an intensity that was, frankly, a bit much. Some were even shouting confessions of love and desperate pleas for him to join them, creating quite a scene. The frantic crowd tried to surge forward, but they were held back by members of the Batian Guild led by Yidao. He stood there completely bewildered, not yet realizing what had happened, as Yidao approached alongside a young man. "Hello, I am Batian Xuanzhan, president of the Batian Guild. It's a pleasure to meet you." He politely returned the greeting. Having a decent impression of the Batian Guild, he shook hands just as a woman with a striking presence walked over. "Greetings, great expert. I am Qinghuan Yuyu, the vice president of the Qinghuan Guild," she introduced herself. She wasted no time, inviting him to join the Qinghuan Guild on behalf of her entire organization. We should note that the Qinghuan Guild, much like the Batian Guild, is one of the top 10 in the gaming world. However, because they only recruit female players, they currently sit at the 10th spot in terms of overall combat power. Other guild leaders waiting nearby quickly stepped forward to show their goodwill, yet he politely declined every single invitation. He only added a few of them as friends, though he pointedly rejected the requests from 2 specific guild representatives. These were the Yushin and Quangren guilds, 2 groups for which he felt absolutely no sympathy whatsoever. As we mentioned, he rejected their friend requests without a second thought, starting with the representative from Yushin. The other was from the Quangren Guild. In his past life, the leaders of these 2 guilds had shown their true colors. Once the game began to invade reality, they immediately became the lapdogs of the ancient evil gods, hunting down fellow players. In the real world, they even assisted the first wave of evil cultists. To be honest, he utterly loathed them both. He lacked the power to stop them before, but in this life, he had no intention of letting them off so easily. Seeing the massive crowds surrounding him several layers deep, he realized he had no choice but to use his angel wings to fly away. Only one condition remained for his class transfer. He needed to slay 5 gold rank bosses. A daunting task, certainly. If he had to search for wild bosses on his own, there was no telling how much time he might waste. Fortunately, as a regressor, he knew a specific place near Eternal Night City that was perfect for finding gold rank bosses and stacking his talents. A little later, the ominous silhouette of the Black Mountains appeared before him, radiating a sense of impending doom. He wasn't entirely sure of the undead crypt's exact location, so he spent some time flying across the mountain range searching for clues. After a while, his gaze suddenly locked onto a secluded valley in the distance, and there he saw it. A pitch-black cave entrance loomed ahead, and he quickly began his descent toward the dark opening. He used a fire cyclone to clear out the undead lingering in the valley before calmly stepping into the depths of the crypt. As he entered, the familiar chime of a game notification echoed in his ears, announcing that he had discovered a special area, the undead crypt. The interior of the chamber was incredibly spacious, easily the size of 2 football fields. A dense crowd of skeletons packed the room, and as he stood at the entrance, we see that the distant undead had not yet noticed him. As far as the eye could see, the room was filled with these white jade skeletons, except for a spot near the stairs at the very back. There, a massive, looming shadow stood apart from the rest. Without a doubt, this was the gold rank boss of the first floor. He didn't hesitate for a second, casting a fire cyclone toward the cluster of skeletons, and in an instant, the air was filled with the sound of splintering bone. Countless white jade skeletons were swept up in the fiery vortex, their remains shattering into pieces. A few moments later, not a single skeleton remained standing on the first floor of the crypt, well, except for one. It was then that the massive figure finally began to move, its heavy footsteps crunching over the carpet of broken bones. The figure approached with an overwhelming sense of pressure, and he soon got a clear look at his opponent. It was a giant skeleton wearing a crown of pure gold, the Skeleton King, a level 25 gold rank boss. Its skills included Summon Skeleton, Wrath of the Dead, and Undead Body, a formidable set of abilities, to be sure. He calculated that it would only take 9 arrows to finish it. The first shot whistled through the air, landing precisely on the Skeleton King's smooth forehead. The boss's health bar dropped by a visible chunk, a sight that seemed to momentarily stun even the Skeleton King itself. The creature touched its own polished skull, seemingly unable to comprehend how a single small arrow could cause such damage. It had lost a full 10th of its health in one go, making it very clear that the human before it was no ordinary intruder. With a silent, spectral roar, the Skeleton King raised its rusted greatsword and swung it violently toward him. He kept up a steady stream of arrows while commanding his angel wings to lift him high into the air. Safely out of the Skeleton King's reach, he became a relentless shooting machine, raining down destruction from above. He maintained a constant output of damage while effortlessly dodging every counterattack. Under this kind of pressure, the boss stood little chance. The Skeleton King lasted less than 15 seconds before collapsing in bitter defeat under such a relentless barrage. As the boss fell, a server-wide announcement echoed across the realm, marking a historic moment for all to see. The player known as Yijian Shuangbiao had become the very first to take down a gold-rank boss. His feat would be forever etched into the history of the Xingyuan continent. Meanwhile, the Skeleton King's remains lay scattered. We see the passage to the next floor light up, and without a moment's hesitation, he stepped forward into the depths. Deep within the furthest reaches of the undead crypt, in a cramped secret chamber, flickering candlelight provided the only warmth. In the corners of this hidden room, 2 mysterious figures remained partially concealed by the heavy shadows. One of them spoke in a low tone, stating that they finally understood the terms of the proposal. 7 days from now, she promised to send her servants toward the city of Yongya. Once the deed was done, 80% of Yongya's population would belong to her, a grim price, to be sure. The city itself and the surrounding lands, however, would be left for the others to claim. But there was one condition. The city lord, Yilisi, had been specifically requested by their clan leader. She was told not to touch the woman, a request she met with a cold, reassuring indifference. She claimed to have no interest in the living, but suddenly, her body gave a slight, sharp tremble. Looking toward the ceiling of the chamber, she remarked that a little bug seemed to have wandered in. The candlelight flickered violently, and in the blink of an eye, one of the figures had already vanished into the dark. Back on the 5th floor, he fired a final arrow to topple an undead knight, letting out a relaxed sigh of relief. All 3 class advancement conditions had finally been met, and he pulled out the scroll once more. The words "completed" now shimmered on the parchment, and he activated the scroll immediately, which was the logical next step. As the power of the scroll surged through him, a notification arrived. He had successfully changed to a unique hidden class. We see the notification appear. He had learned the skills Eye of Haotsong and the Law of Azure Thunder. Along with the Azure Sky Arrow, he knew hidden classes were powerful, but he hadn't expected this level of strength. Gaining 1 level now granted stats equal to 12 levels for anyone else, which wasn't just strong, it was game-breaking. Beyond the massive boost to his free attribute points, the 3 new skills he'd acquired left him absolutely overjoyed. The first skill, Eye of Haotsong, felt as if it were tailor-made for him, addressing his biggest concern. His worry wasn't his firing range, but the physical limits of his own eyesight. However, this skill changed everything. He realized he could use the Eye of Haotsong to illuminate and grant vision over any target area he chose. With that vision, he could deliver precision strikes, whether basic attacks or skills, directly onto his targets. Nothing could escape him now. To be honest, he had essentially become a human-shaped guided missile. But just as he was savoring his new power, a raspy, haunting voice echoed right beside his ear. The voice let out a chilling laugh that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the crypt. It remarked that it had expected someone truly formidable to have broken into this sacred place. Instead, it found only a lowly weakling who had barely managed his first-class advancement. As the words faded, we see a figure shrouded in a heavy black robe appear at the entrance to the next floor. He stood on guard, his gaze locking onto the entity's title, Lich Jelluok, a diamond rank boss. The stats for health, mana, attack, and defense were all hidden behind a wall of terrifying uncertainty. Seeing a long string of question marks made his skin crawl. In Xingyuan, any target 30 levels higher remained a mystery. Since everything was obscured, this monster had to be at least level 40, a death sentence in any normal situation. However, the name caught his attention, Lich Jelluok. A lich? He began to wonder if it could be the one. He suddenly remembered the legends. It turned out this creature, Jelluok, had been hiding here all along. In his past life, this name was far from obscure around Eternal Night City. Countless players and NPCs remembered it well. What made Jelluok truly unforgettable was the massive undead legion he commanded during the siege of the city. It was Jelluok who led that army, and had it not been for Ulysses' decisive strike to slay him, Eternal Night City might have fallen under the dual assault. Now, with the enemy standing right before him, he had to act. He immediately used a town portal scroll. Just kidding. If Jelluok were 200 kilometers away, he might have stayed. He wouldn't mind testing his strength from a distance, but at a mere 200 meters, he wasn't about to trade blows. As the teleportation light began to glow around him, Jelluok paused for a moment, visibly stunned by the audacity. The Lich quickly realized what was happening and hissed, asking if he really thought he could escape his domain so easily. Did he think this place was some sort of playground? Jelluok raised his hand, preparing to launch a devastating attack. The monster cursed him, calling him a wretched insect and swearing that once he was found, he would make his soul endure thousands of years of unspeakable torment. Fortunately, his form had already materialized safely within the teleportation circle of Eternal Night City. This encounter taught him a hard lesson. Playing without crowd control skills was simply too dangerous. He then pulled out a special skill book. We see the notification as he uses the class skill selection book, offering him a choice between several powerful abilities. The first was the Triple Divine Sword, which splits a single shot into 3, dealing massive area of effect damage. Then there was the summoning of the Heavenly General, calling forth a divine warrior in the name of Haotsong to fight by his side. This general's attributes would be double his own and last for 30 minutes, a formidable ally, to say the least. The Haotsong Divine Sword class didn't offer many skills, only about 20 in total, if we're being precise. However, every single one of them possessed staggering numbers and exaggerated effects, leaving him momentarily conflicted. In the end, he chose a control skill called Grip of Divine Wrath, an ability that could be activated instantly. The skill condenses space to suppress all objects in a target area for 5 seconds, costing 400 mana with a 30-minute cooldown. Having chosen his skill, he immediately prepared to enhance it, starting by using several skill enhancement scrolls. He focused all 3 of his scrolls on the Grip of Divine Wrath, using them up without a second thought. The original description of the skill began to shift and change right before our eyes as the Grip of Divine Wrath evolved. Now an instant cast, it suppresses everything in the area for 8 seconds, though the mana cost has doubled to 800. The cooldown was slashed to 15 minutes, a significant improvement in both duration and frequency, to be honest. While an extra 3 seconds of suppression might not sound like much, in a high-stakes fight, it's an eternity. Suddenly, his friend notifications began to flash, and we see a message arriving from Yahello. It turns out that because of him, both Yahello and Yuying had followed him to the business city. They hadn't been bold enough to ask him to power level them, choosing instead to hunt in the wild as a sibling duo. While grinding, the two of them stumbled upon a silver boss wandering the fields. Talk about incredible luck. He didn't reply to Yahello immediately. Instead, he opened his map to check their exact coordinates. Realizing the location was well within his firing range, he felt a wave of relief and told her not to worry. He asked her to send over the boss's attributes and join his party, and she complied almost instantly. Yahello sent the panel for the Morin King, a level 12 silver boss with some rather intimidating stats. Its skill set included the Morin Sword Tower, Berserk Charge, and a defensive ability called Scale Armor Protection. He accepted the party invite and told them to get ready to grab the loot the moment the boss died. The young girl looked around with bright, searching eyes, asking if the great god had actually arrived yet. She saw only other players approaching, but he replied that while he wasn't coming over, he could still kill the boss. This left poor Yao Yao completely baffled. After all, how do you kill something without actually being there? She wondered if he could really kill this boss with just a thought, despite being nowhere in sight. While Yao Yao was lost in her confusion, Yuying walked over and gently tapped her on the shoulder. He asked if the great god was coming, noting that more and more players were beginning to gather. Yao Yao explained that while the great god wasn't coming in person, he claimed he could still kill the boss. He told them to be ready to loot, but Yuying was skeptical. How could anyone fight without being there? Just then, a few players approached them, suggesting that since they all found the boss, they should team up. They argued that if they didn't act fast, the big guilds would arrive and leave the solo players with nothing. As they spoke, their eyes drifted toward Yao Yao, unable to hide their clear admiration for her appearance. Yuying's expression darkened as he pulled his sister behind him, firmly stating they could handle the boss themselves. He told the strangers that their teammate was already on his way, a small white lie to keep them back. The players laughed, mocking him for using such an outdated excuse to keep the boss for himself. They accused him of just wanting to sell the boss to a guild and suggested they simply split the rewards. Yuying remained firm, repeating that they didn't need any help and could manage the fight on their own. Seeing his stubborn attitude, the other players' expressions turned cold and unfriendly. They claimed they were being kind by sharing, and grew angry at being treated like fools by a solo player. They challenged him to prove he could kill the Morin King, a boss far beyond the reach of ordinary players. The leader pointed at the boss, unaware that a streak of light was already screaming across the distant sky. The projectile struck the Morin King's head with perfect precision, and an absurd damage number floated into the air. In a single heartbeat, the boss's health bar vanished completely, leaving the man who was pointing utterly stunned. He stared at his own hand, wondering for a brief, delusional moment if his finger had just one-shot a boss. In the middle of the confusion, we see Yuying move like a flash, and the glowing items on the ground instantly vanish. This included a piece of equipment radiating a brilliant golden light, a sight that made the surrounding players' eyes nearly pop out. The fact that Yuying could loot the boss's drops proved beyond any doubt that it was indeed his teammate who had made the kill. Gold-tier equipment. It was a legendary find, especially considering that the auction house hadn't seen a single gold item yet. Driven by pure instinct and greed, the crowd quickly surrounded the siblings, demanding they leave the gold equipment behind. They shouted that the two couldn't leave otherwise, insisting that the gold item belonged to whoever was fast enough to claim it. The threats grew louder as they warned the siblings not to make them get violent over such a valuable prize. The demand was simple: leave the equipment or face the consequences, and the circle around them began to tighten. As the players grew more aggressive, Yuying's expression darkened, realizing they were in a truly dangerous position. Yao Yao hid behind her brother, trembling, and quickly sent a message to the great god explaining their dire situation. She told him they were surrounded by people demanding the gold equipment they had just picked up. She added that her brother had already sent the item to the auction house, though the great god already knew exactly what was happening. High up in the azure sky, an ethereal eye, almost invisible against the blue, hovered silently over the battlefield. This was the Eye of Haotsong, a manifestation of his passive ability, and under its watchful gaze, nothing escaped his notice. He could see the siblings being cornered, but he wasn't worried, simply replying with a calm message telling them it would be fine. With a single thought, a bolt of lightning suddenly tore through the sky, descending directly toward the rowdy crowd. The strike hit the very center of where the siblings stood, sending arcs of electricity dancing wildly in every direction. The two of them squeezed their eyes shut, waiting for the end, yet they felt no pain or any strange sensation at all. Instead, it was the surrounding players who began to scream in agony, and a moment later, the siblings opened their eyes in confusion. They found that every single hostile player had vanished, leaving behind nothing but a field of glittering equipment on the ground. As the two of them stood there in complete shock, Yao Yao suddenly let out a startled cry, calling out to her brother. She explained that the great god wanted them to pick up all the equipment and sell it, as he was watching them, leaving Yuying utterly stunned. First, there was the instant kill, and now he was summoning heavenly lightning from across the map. It really makes one wonder if they were even playing the same game. Meanwhile, we return to the Eternal Night City Lord's mansion. There, we see the cold and peerless city lord, Iris, dressed today in an elegantly tailored formal gown. Her stunning figure, accentuated by the dress, radiated an incredible charm, further heightened by her proud, queen-like gaze. It was the kind of presence that sparked a strange urge to conquer, though Haotsong remained perfectly clear-headed despite her undeniable beauty. He knew all too well that she was a powerhouse nearing the fourth transition. A single mistake in her presence could mean death. Haotsong greeted her respectfully, and she acknowledged him, having heard he was seeking an audience with the city lord. He explained that while training in the Undead Mountains, he discovered a hidden crypt, and after venturing deep inside, he made a discovery. Haotsong recounted his entire experience within the Undead Crypt to Iris, including the fact that he had slain a level 30 gold boss. He hid nothing from her. Iris noted that she was aware of a lich residing within the Undead Mountains. However, she found it hard to believe that he could actually defeat a Death Knight serving under that lich. She asked if he was trying to deceive her, to which Haotsong replied that if she didn't believe him, he could demonstrate his power right then. Accepting the offer, Iris turned and led him through the main hall of the mansion toward the training grounds. They soon arrived at the vast martial arena, where rows of training dummies stood in neat formation across the western plaza. She pointed out that those dummies were built to withstand the attacks of third transition professionals. She told him he could use his skills without holding back, and for context, third transition refers to those above level 60. With his current attack power, he certainly couldn't destroy them, but giving Iris a small shock was definitely within his reach. Wasting no time, he drew the full moon longbow and began to charge his shot, ready to put on a proper show. Naturally, he had to unleash his strongest attack, and so he began charging the heavenly sword. Beside him, we see a flash of surprise cross Iris's eyes. With her strength, she could naturally sense what was coming. She felt the terrifying destructive power contained within the blade as it shot forward, trailing a brilliant blue light. The damage hit a staggering 1,231,452, causing Iris's hand, hidden beneath her gown, to tremble ever so slightly, a rare reaction for her. A notification chimed. Iris, the city lord of Eternal Night, had increased her favorability toward him by 20, bringing the total to 30. The sudden game prompt made Haotsong pause for a moment. After all, favorability is a rare metric between NPCs and players. Clearly, his performance had earned Iris's recognition, sparking a genuine sense of admiration within her. It seems the strong have always admired the strong, and in this moment, Iris was undeniably moved. To be honest, who wouldn't be? She wondered how someone at the start of their first transition could possess destructive power comparable to the late stages of the third. She asked herself if this was truly the potential of a descendant, while Haotsong turned back to address the city lord. He explained that what he had just shown her was merely his strongest single-target attack. Next, he offered to demonstrate his area of effect capabilities, calling out for the lightning to descend. As he lowered his hand, a bolt of lightning as thick as a pillar crashed down from the sky. A dense cloud of damage numbers began to rise from the area where the training dummies stood. Watching the display, Iris felt her heart race even faster, and her favorability toward him increased by another 10 points. With her favorability now at 40, she admitted she recognized his strength and had a specific place in mind to recommend to him. She promised this opportunity would allow his power to grow rapidly, and Haotsong's eyes lit up at the prospect of a hidden quest. This was a hidden quest that no one in his past life had ever managed to obtain from her. Respected City Lord, he began. He told her he looked forward to her recommendation, but she interrupted, telling him not to call her City Lord, but simply Iris. He agreed to call her Iris, and in response, she allowed a small, rare smile to grace her lips. In that fleeting moment, the way she smiled caused Haotsong's heart to skip a beat. He couldn't help but think that this NPC was designed far too realistically for his own good. Sensing his slight distraction, Iris didn't take offense. Instead, she recommended he attend the Empire's Royal Academy. However, before he could go, she explained that he would first need to obtain a specific item as proof for admission. When he asked for clarification, she told him he needed the Star of Hope, a title reserved only for the most elite newcomers. Only those with such a title have the chance to enter the academy. Normally, this is earned back in the starting lands. She noted that while descendants have a chance to earn it there, the difficulty is usually far too high for anyone to succeed. But then, Iris suddenly froze in place as Haotsong reached into his inventory. He pulled out the very Star of Hope title he had earned by clearing the Hell-level trial back in the beginner village. He confirmed that yes, he had indeed cleared the trial at its absolute maximum difficulty. She was stunned that he had achieved this in the starting lands, finding herself momentarily at a loss for words. The heavy rise and fall of her chest betrayed her shock, but Haotsong simply noted that he would be representing Eternal Night City. He suggested that as the city lord, she might want to reward him with something useful. Iris could only blink in surprise. She realized then that this was likely the real reason he had been showing off his strength. Tell me, she said, what is it you want? He asked if she happened to have a level 30 gold tier equipment set lying around. She admitted that she did. However, she questioned if he could even wear it, as descendants must meet strict strength requirements for such gear. She told him giving it to him now would be useless, but he simply told her not to worry and to have it ready while he went to level up. She told him to go, promising he could collect the set once he completed his next transition, and just like that, the gold set was his. With his admission secured and the gear promised, his next task was simple, a frantic grind to hit level 30 within a single day. After finally emerging from his gaming capsule, he headed upstairs to find Lina. After knocking twice, Lina quickly opened the door, and Haotsong greeted her with a simple, "Sister Na, it's me." She teased him for finally remembering her, though deep down, she wondered why he was visiting so late at night. She jokingly called him a bad boy, but as we see, her eyes told a slightly different story as she looked at him. He noticed her gaze softening into a shy pink hue as her face reddened, so he quickly told her he had something to discuss. She turned and walked back to the living room sofa, and it was only then that Haotsong noticed she was wearing a silk nightgown. The soft fabric hung loosely, tracing the elegant curves of her figure in a way that was, frankly, quite distracting. He averted his eyes and followed her to the sofa, where she sat down and invited him to speak his mind. She asked what business brought him here so late, her face flushing deeper as she waited for his answer. Her eyes held a flicker of nervous expectation, but he simply asked if she wanted to play the game with him. He suggested she give him her in-game ID so that he could go and find her within the virtual world. Lina felt a wave of relief mixed with a hint of disappointment. He had made her nervous all night just for that. Returning to the game, Haotsong immediately opened his friend list and typed in the name she gave him, count to 3. He couldn't quite understand why she chose such a name, as it didn't seem to suit her personality at all. The request was accepted almost instantly, and Lina immediately sent him a message in a flurry of excitement. She was shocked to learn he was the famous 1 arrow, 2 marks, though she quickly told him to get over himself. She scolded him for keeping such a big secret, leaving Haotsong feeling a bit guilty as he quickly changed the subject. He offered to help her level up, and Lina, not one to hold a grudge, sent him her current coordinates. She mentioned she had a friend with her, and Haotsong noted they were in Holy Light City, which was perfect. He could use this chance to pick up the legendary quest there, while over at the training grounds outside the city. Lina ignored her friend's protests and sat right down on the grass, eventually lying back to relax in the sun. She was wearing a set of worn-out armor that revealed glimpses of her pale midriff and arms. The armor clung tightly to her body, perfectly tracing the fiery curves of her silhouette for all to see. This earned her a sharp roll of the eyes from the woman beside her, who pointed out how much skin she was exposing. Xiaoyu, a mage by profession, spoke up as she reached over to tug Lina's armor down just a bit. She wore the light gray robes exclusive to her class, which completely enveloped her body in loose fabric. One could only judge by the subtle curves of the fabric that her figure was likely every bit as impressive as Lina's. Lina groaned, asking why she was more annoying than her mother, and told her to wait until her friend arrived. She promised that then, Xiaoyu could relax too, leaving her friend wondering just what kind of powerful ally Lina had. As they were chatting, we see a group of players beginning to surround them with rather suspicious looks on their faces. Lina frowned and sat up, staring coldly at the men, specifically at a lean young man leading the group. The man looked at Lina and Xiaoyu with a smirk, asking if there were only 2 of them training there. He invited them to join his party, boasting that they were members of the prestigious Divine Power Guild. Deep down, a look of intense greed flickered in his eyes. Wang Hao felt his luck had truly peaked today. He had only come out to train with his guild members, never expecting to stumble upon such high-quality female players. He was particularly fixated on the warrior on the grass, her face, her figure, and those incredibly long legs. The mage wasn't bad either, despite the heavy robes. Wang Hao's experienced eyes could tell there was a solid foundation beneath. The initial surprise in Wang Hao's eyes gradually turned into blatant desire, which Lina and Xiaoyu noticed immediately. They made no effort to hide their disgust, flatly telling him they had no interest in joining his team and to leave. But Wang Hao wasn't ready to go, insisting that since they were all training in the same area, there was no need to be so cold. In any normal situation, other players might have accepted, as training alone is exhausting and the monster's strikes truly hurt. But Lina and Xiaoyu weren't interested in his offer at all, and Lina simply snapped at him to get lost. The man sneered, calling them romantic little ladies and suggesting they either spend time training with his boys or die and be sent back to the city. Just then, a figure suddenly descended from the sky, landing perfectly right in front of Lina. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw him, exclaiming that he had finally arrived. He turned back and gave Lina a wide grin, noting that arriving at the right time is better than arriving early, especially to clear out these flies. Lina spoke with total arrogance, completely disregarding Wang Hao and his group, who all began to glare at him with pure rage. They demanded to know who he was and how he dared interfere with the Divine Power Guild, with some urging Wang Hao to just kill him. They claimed anyone provoking them in Holy Light City must be tired of living, but he didn't even bother to argue, simply raising a hand. A bolt of lightning as thick as a bowl suddenly struck the middle of Wang Hao's group, exploding into a shower of thunderstones a second later. A series of exaggerated damage numbers, exceeding 1 million, rose above their heads. To be honest, they never stood a chance. They only had a moment to feel the lightning's fury before they all collapsed without even a scream, leaving his name glowing a deep, dark red. The system announced they had been killed by the player Yijin Shuangbiao. A moment later, they emerged from the Holy Light City respawn point. Wang Hao's expression became quite a sight to behold as he realized the killer was Yijin Shuangbiao, who was supposed to be in Eternal Night City. Countless questions flashed through Wang Hao's mind, but he quickly recalled the specific instructions his guild leader had given him. The order was simple. If anyone spotted Yijin Shuangbiao, they were to report it immediately. Thinking of this, Wang Hao hurriedly opened his friend list to message the leader, Yushin Dangtian, that their target had arrived in Holy Light City. Upon receiving the news, Yushin Dangtian immediately turned toward his guild members with a look of grim determination. Soon, the entirety of Holy Light City became lively due to a single command from the guild leader as a massive wave of players began to move. Large groups from the Divine Power Guild marched toward the southern part of the city, drawing curious stares from every passerby they encountered. People whispered, wondering if it was truly that level 30 powerhouse, Ijin Shuangbiao. And indeed, it was him. We see the onlookers whispering, wondering what the guild leader was thinking. After all, how do you kill a level 30 powerhouse? Meanwhile, at the south gate, Yushin Dangtian stood with a cold expression, addressing his core members and ordering every single thief and hunter to be deployed immediately. He demanded to know Ijin Shuangbiao's exact coordinates within 30 minutes. As they shouted their compliance, we returned to our protagonist's side. After he had wiped out Wang Hao's group with a single wave, Li Na began bombarding him with questions, asking if he held a hidden class. She couldn't understand why he was so much stronger than the hidden classes on the forums, and she grew impatient when he didn't answer right away. She demanded to know what his silence meant. To be honest, he felt as though his head was about to explode from the sheer noise. He felt completely drowned by Li Na's endless questions, finally suggesting that they should start moving before he answered anything at all. He promised to answer her one by one as they traveled. Only then did Li Na finally relent, agreeing to drop the subject for the moment. She asked where they were going to train, then suddenly introduced her best friend Xiaoyu, calling her sweet, beautiful, and easy to tease. Li Na pulled Xiaoyu forward while giving him a playful wink. Xiaoyu's face turned bright red with embarrassment as she tried to swat at her friend. Xiaoyu jokingly threatened to scratch Li Na to death, telling her to stop being so annoying. It was a lively scene, to say the least. He looked at Xiaoyu, remembering that in his past life, Li Na had only mentioned her briefly. Back then, she was just a small, fragile thing. She had died early during the monster invasion, a loss that had caused Li Na to weep for a very long time. It was rare for Li Na to have such a close friend to tease. He noted that the monsters around Holy Light City were far too low level for them. He suggested they head somewhere much further away, opening the game map and pointing toward a region shrouded in total darkness. Li Na and Xiaoyu looked at him with pure confusion, worried that such a long journey would take them half a day on foot. In response, he simply opened the gate of angels behind him, explaining that he would just fly them there himself. Li Na's eyes lit up at the sight. With a grin, he reached out and wrapped his arms around both of their waists at once. They soared into the sky, the two women instinctively clinging to him as they followed the map's guidance across the horizon. They quickly crossed over vast training grounds before finally landing. But as Li Na and Xiaoyu looked at the monsters before them, they froze. They stood frozen in place as they gazed at the monsters before them, evil heretics, all at level 45. Without a word, he raised his hand and unleashed a fire cyclone, sending a roaring red vortex tearing through the camp. Li Na finally snapped out of her daze, staring at him in utter disbelief as a crisp notification rang out. His level had increased to 30, granting him a point to all attributes and 5 free attribute points. When the game's announcement echoed in the girl's ears, Li Na began to tremble with pure, unadulterated excitement. Beside her, Xiaoyu was nodding frantically, her rapid breathing making it clear just how overwhelmed she felt in that moment. As for our protagonist, he remained perfectly calm, knowing he needed his second job advancement to level up further. He told Li Na not to change classes yet, promising to secure a hidden class for her in a few days. Hearing the mention of a hidden class, Li Na grew even more ecstatic and suddenly threw herself onto him. She told him he was wonderful, claiming all those years of looking after him had finally paid off before kissing his cheek. Xiaoyu watched the two of them with wide eyes, sighing about being forced to watch such a public display of affection. Since he still had business in Holy Light City, he decided to fly back alone, and the girls offered no objections. They immediately crushed their return scrolls, and as he flew toward the city, something caught his eye. He soon noticed a massive gathering of players below and, out of curiosity, decided to fly down to investigate. In the center of the crowd, Yushin Dangtian was absolutely livid, screaming that everyone around him was useless. He called them all failures, pointing out that 3,000 thieves and hunters had been deployed for nothing. They had somehow failed to find a single trace of Ijin Shuangbiao, and his rage was palpable. The core members didn't dare utter a word in the face of his fury, until Wang Hao felt a sudden chill. Wang Hao looked up in confusion, telling the guild leader that there seemed to be someone descending from the sky above them. The rest of the Yushin guild followed his gaze, and suddenly, Yushin Dangtian's expression shifted into one of pure shock. Yushin Dangtian pointed toward the sky, barking orders for every single member of the guild to get ready. He commanded them to strike the moment he gave the word, and his orders spread through the ranks like wildfire. Outside the south gate, over 10,000 players looked up in unison, and our protagonist finally saw their true intentions. It seemed they were actually planning to surround and kill him right here in the open wild. He decided it was high time to give Yushin Dangtian a little shock, so he began to lower his altitude. He hovered directly above Yushin Dangtian, looking down at the man whose face was growing increasingly grim. To the guild leader, this silent observation felt like pure disdain, and he screamed for everyone to take their positions. With a frantic roar of "kill him," the signal was given, and the peace of the afternoon was shattered. The long-range classes, who had been waiting for this exact moment, began unleashing their most powerful skills at him. As thousands of attacks converged on his position, a faint, mocking smile played across his lips. He simply stood his ground, letting the spells collide in a massive, deafening explosion that lit up the sky. The crowd of onlookers watched with wide eyes, certain that even the legendary Yijian Shuangbiao couldn't survive that. Yushin Dangtian sneered, mocking him for daring to underestimate the might of the Yushin Guild. He laughed like a man possessed, convinced he had finally taught the upstart a lesson in power. His face was twisted with a manic joy, but as we often see in these stories, that smile was about to vanish. As the smoke cleared, Yijian Shuangbiao stood there completely unscathed, leaving the guild leaders stammering in disbelief. Now, it was his turn to respond, and he quietly prepared to unleash a devastating fire cyclone. With a casual flick of his wrist, he dropped the roaring vortex right into the thickest part of the enemy crowd. A sea of damage numbers erupted instantly, and every player in that zone was vaporized into pillars of white light. The sight was so overwhelming that Yushin Dangtian could only stare, his eyes nearly popping out of his head. The guild managers were still barking orders, unable to fathom how any player at this stage could deal such absurd damage. In their minds, Yijian Shuangbiao must have been using some kind of high-level shield skill to remain airborne under such a heavy barrage. And as we know, every shield has its limit. They were certain that if they just kept pushing, he would eventually fall. Instead of just standing there taking hits, he beat his angel wings to soar even higher, casually dropping another fire cyclone as he rose. With a 3-second cooldown, the fire cyclone was his most efficient tool for mass destruction, especially in a large-scale chaotic brawl like this. The effect was devastating as hundreds more players perished in the flames, and it was then that he noticed the guild's leadership team. Targeting the managers who were directing the battle, he immediately activated his Thunder Law skill, calling down a righteous storm from above. A group of high-ranking officers was instantly vaporized, leaving a literal carpet of dropped equipment behind, which finally gave Yushin Dangtian pause. He finally realized that something was terribly wrong. Yijian Shuangbiao's damage and defense were far beyond the reach of any ordinary player. Deep down, a cold realization set in. If the fight continued like this, he would be the one ending up at the respawn point. He decided he had to leave immediately, and without a word to his struggling guild members, the thought of survival took over. He secretly crushed a return scroll and vanished back to Xinguang City, but our protagonist noticed his cowardly exit almost instantly. With a cold sneer, he activated his Eye of the Void to lock onto the coordinates in Xinguang City, mocking the idea that the man could actually escape. He muttered that the guild leader hadn't asked for permission to leave yet, then released a powerful shot from his bow of the heavens. The streak of light surged into the distance, while back at the city teleport point, Yushin Dangtian was looking rather pale and frustrated. The managers who had just been resurrected gathered around their leader, looking for guidance on what their next move should be. Just as Yushin Dangtian was about to answer, he caught a glimpse of a brilliant blue light flashing across the distant horizon. Before he could even register what the object inside the light was, it began streaking directly toward him with terrifying precision. In that split second, he felt a primal sense of dread and didn't hesitate to crush a rare life-saving item called Source Voidification. It was an item he had worked incredibly hard to obtain, and instantly, Yushin Dangtian's body began to turn completely transparent. However, reality had a way of defying expectations, and that blue light acted like a needle of truth that could see through any deception. It struck Yushin Dangtian's ethereal, voidified body directly, dealing a staggering 1.8 million damage. As that absurd number rose from his chest, he instantly transformed into a flash of white light and vanished from the spot. The other guild managers were left completely stunned. Everything had happened so fast they couldn't even process that their leader was gone. He had been picked off and killed instantly by an attack from miles away, and at that same moment, the situation outside the city shifted. Under the relentless devastation of the fire cyclone, more and more players were being sent back to their respawn points in waves. Once over half of the players had been incinerated by the flames, the remaining survivors finally reached their breaking point. Resentment toward Yushin Dangtian and the guild leadership began to boil over, and members started quitting the guild in droves. Voices rose in the chaos, with players asking what the guild was even doing and declaring their immediate resignation. This mass exodus infuriated Yushin Dangtian, who had only just resurrected, and he cursed the name of Yijian Shuangbiao under his breath. He swore he would find a way to kill him, but he barely had time to get the words out before the sky darkened once more. A bolt of lightning descended directly onto his head, while the surrounding players watched in absolute horror. He was killed instantly right at the respawn fountain, bringing this grand, large-scale siege to a sudden and humiliating end. The entire battle had lasted less than 5 minutes, leaving the crowd of onlookers in a state of complete and utter shock. People began to whisper about how Yijian Shuangbiao was far too powerful, finally noticing the millions of damage points he was dealing. Others pointed out that he was already hitting for tens of thousands at level 5, so his current strength at level 30 was only natural. It was truly terrifying, and because of this single battle, the name Yijian Shuangbiao began to echo through the halls of every major power. Having successfully entered Xinguang City, our protagonist headed straight for the largest structure in sight, the Holy Light Cathedral. Inside, seated upon the main throne, was an elderly man with hair and a beard as white as snow. He looked at the young man with a knowing smile, remarking that it appeared he had successfully defeated his challengers. The high priest spoke of the demons suppressed in the primal lands, noting how impressive it was that our hero had received the god's blessing. With a gentle smile, High Priest Arenbo waved his hand, and a warm, holy light flowed directly into Yijian Shuangbiao's body. A notification appeared. He had received Arenbo's blessing, increasing his maximum health by 300 points, which made him raise an eyebrow. For any ordinary player, such a blessing would be a dream come true, something they'd celebrate for days. But for him, it was merely better than nothing. He thanked the priest, who then mentioned a certain troublemaker. Arenbo promised to reveal the next stage of the quest if the head of the Lich Glock was brought back to him. And so, the High Priest officially issued the task, retrieve the head of the Lich Glock. The choice to accept was now his. A strange look crossed his face, as he realized the Lich Glock was the very same one hiding within the undead crypts. What a coincidence! He accepted the trial, and the priest declared that the glory of the gods would be with him. After bidding farewell to Arenbo, he used a return scroll to reach Evernight City, where he met City Lord Elise once again. Her expression seemed even colder than before, yet she still gave him a respectful nod upon his arrival. She addressed him as Yijian Shuangbiao, sharing the news that the Sea Race had already finished gathering their forces. They were set to attack Evernight City in 10 hours. Hearing this, his expression grew serious. What was meant to happen had finally arrived. In his previous life, he had only heard stories of the Sea Race's assault, but this time, he would experience the battle firsthand. He looked at Elise and asked if she had called him there specifically to discuss a particular matter. She spoke of General Shisha of Evernight City, explaining that with his assistance, the tide of battle could turn. She was certain they could end the fight quickly if they worked together against the impending Sea Race invasion. City Lord Elise then sent a formal team request, and without a moment's hesitation, he chose to agree. He told her he would be happy to fight by her side, to which she replied that she knew he wouldn't refuse. And with that, City Lord Elise's favorability toward him increased by 20 points, strengthening their bond for the coming war. As soon as she finished speaking, Elise hurried out of the room with a sense of urgent purpose. The countdown had begun, for Evernight City was destined to face the Sea Race invasion in just 10 hours. A public announcement suddenly echoed, informing all players bound to Evernight City that they could join the defense. Along the streets, the players were initially stunned, but that confusion quickly turned into a look of endless excitement. A regional defense quest? To them, this was a perfect chance to farm points, a stroke of luck they hadn't expected. More and more players began returning to the city to prepare as the minutes and seconds ticked away. Finally, a dark, surging tide appeared on the distant horizon, signaling that the enemy had arrived. Dressed in her full battle regalia, Elise passed through the crowds under the protection of her guards to reach the city walls. Every player who caught a glimpse of her along the way froze in their tracks, struck by her sheer beauty. She looked 10,000 times more stunning than usual as she moved forward, surrounded by her loyal soldiers. Elise stepped onto the ramparts, looking down from her high vantage point at the bustling crowds below. She gazed out toward the west at the restless masses and addressed them, calling them her fellow citizens. She warned them that the coming battle would be perilous, as the very survival of Evernight City was at stake. She declared that the glory of the ancient gods would be with them all throughout the struggle. A notification appeared. Everyone had received a divine blessing from the Holy Knight, Elise. Their health, mana, and attack power were all increased by 5%, a welcome boost for the fight ahead. This mass blessing sent the players into a frenzy, with some shouting "Long live the City Lord" at the top of their lungs. Others expressed their fanatical admiration for her as the distant sound of war horns grew louder and closer. The surging tide of the Sea Race finally revealed its true face, led by a horde of creatures with fish heads and human bodies. These spear-wielding minions were so numerous they stretched as far as the eye could see, giving the players no time to strike first. The Evernight City guards were the first to strike, as a black rain of arrows suddenly rose from the high city walls. The projectiles traced a perfect arc before plunging into the Murloc ranks, and in just a single moment of contact, vast numbers of the creatures fell silently to the ground, a sight that left the watching players completely speechless. Inspired, some players immediately launched their own attacks on the monsters below, chatting and laughing as they fought. With a simple wave of their hands, they cut down the advancing Murlocs. 3 hours passed in what seemed like an instant. The initial wave of Murlocs had been wiped clean, but next came the true siege leaders, the Flying Fish Commanders, diamond rank bosses. These level 55 threats possessed deadly skills like the Flying Fish Flash Strike and the Crashing Sea Wave. Equipped with life springs and dying breath passives, they seemed invincible as players shouted for their brothers to regroup. The other players unleashed a barrage of skills at the Flying Fish Commander, their powers painting a colorful streak across the sky. Yet, once the thick smoke cleared, the Flying Fish Commander stood there, appearing completely unharmed by the assault. Without warning, the commander used its flash strike against the players on the wall, moving with the speed of a ghost. It began to harvest lives at will, and in the blink of an eye, over a dozen players were struck down in a panic. Just as despair began to set in, our protagonist descended upon the battlefield like a god from the heavens. Observing the commander's stats, he took no chances and immediately used his god's wrath grip to seize the enemy. This instant cast skill condensed the very space around the target, suppressing everything within the area for 8 long seconds. The moment the god's wrath grip took hold, he simultaneously unleashed a devastating fire cyclone into the fray. He then hovered in midair, drawing his bow to charge a shot as the cyclone manifested directly beneath the commander. The flames began to rapidly burn through the boss's health bar, leaving a look of pure shock on the commander's face. It couldn't believe that a human who hadn't even undergone a second job advancement could deal such exaggerated damage. It finally understood why the earlier fodder couldn't break the line, though the commander still felt it could handle the situation. What truly concerned the commander was the fact that his body wouldn't move, leaving him wondering what had been done to him. The only answer he received was the brilliant blue light glowing on the bowstring, as the flying fish commander's expression shifted to shock. He couldn't fathom how a human who hadn't even reached their second job advancement could possibly threaten a high-ranking member of the sea race. He doubted any real harm could be done, until a staggering damage indicator of over 4.5 million appeared. The situation had changed instantly. To be honest, seeing such massive damage numbers would leave anyone questioning reality. The commander stared in disbelief, unable to process how a single strike could be so devastatingly powerful. His health bar snapped like a brittle piece of ice, vanishing by half in a single, heart-stopping moment. The flying fish commander, who had just been plotting his escape from the crowd's control, suddenly found his perspective shifting entirely. A look of pure terror filled his eyes as our protagonist raised a hand, calling a bolt of lightning from the heavens. Desperate, he cried out that he was the nephew of General Shisha, begging for his life to be spared. Ignoring the pleas for mercy, our hero remained expressionless, his fingers moving in a blur as he loosed arrow after arrow. With a final cry of unwilling resentment, the flying fish commander perished in a fit of rage. As the effects of the god's wrath grip finally faded, a massive game announcement echoed in the ears of every player present. The server-wide alert declared that the player Yijian Shuangbiao had achieved the world-first kill of a level 55 diamond boss. The reward was a diamond-grade equipment selection chest, a prize that left the surrounding crowd gasping in awe. It wasn't until the third server-wide announcement finished that the players finally snapped out of their daze and began to cheer. They realized Yijian Shuangbiao had just soloed a diamond boss. Meanwhile, we shift our gaze deep into the underwater world. In the dark depths, a conspiracy was unfolding, with one voice claiming that Evernight City would soon belong to them. The deal was struck, the city for one side, and the head of Yijian Shuangbiao for the other. A fair trade, in their eyes. While the players celebrated the boss's fall, the commander on the shore noticed a sudden, ominous change in the sea's behavior. The horns of the battlefield blared, and immediately after, a formidable figure rose into the air from the distant ranks. In just a few moments, the figure arrived right before us, and only then could we see the newcomer's true appearance. It was a half-human, half-shark creature riding a manta ray, General Shisha, a legendary boss. His level, health, and mana stats were completely hidden. Aside from his name, nothing could be discerned. Every other attribute was a string of question marks, as he was clearly at a much higher level than our hero. He roared that Yijian had ruined his grand plans, declaring that from this day forward, things would change. He vowed that Yijian would be hunted relentlessly by the sea race for all eternity. General Shisha issued a formal bounty, causing Yijian's reputation with all sea race factions to drop to -100. He would be unable to purchase any sea race goods. As Shisha spoke, the system notifications confirmed the grim reality. To be honest, our protagonist didn't seem bothered at all, and seeing that look of disdain only fueled the general's rage. The general acknowledged that Yijian was a descendant, but promised to kill him today regardless. He intended to collect a blood debt for his fallen subordinates, and with those words, the general prepared to strike. An energy spear formed in his hand and was hurled toward Yijian, whose expression finally shifted with a hint of concern. Just as he prepared to dodge, a cold, clear voice echoed in his ear, challenging anyone who dared to kill his people. Iris appeared, wielding a massive shield and a golden longsword to block the path. She looked heroic and valiant, possessing an undeniable noble aura that commanded the entire battlefield. Facing General Shisha alone had been a bit nerve-wracking, but having a high-ranking knight as a shield changed everything. It was clear that Iris's presence applied significant pressure to the enemy, providing a sense of security to our hero. Unless they were surrounded, that shark-headed general stood no chance of reaching him, so Yijian drew his bow once more. He aimed directly at General Shisha, who certainly wasn't going to sit idly by and let the attack proceed. The Sea Race priests quickly cast several blessings upon General Shisha, and now the formidable commander was shrouded in an intense red glow. His aura surged, reaching a level of power far beyond what we had seen just moments before. With his momentum reaching its peak, he roared for the humans to prepare for their deaths. The weapon in his hand hissed like a vengeful beast, its tip flashing with light as it lunged directly toward our hero. But Iris had been watching Shisha's every move, immediately activating her defensive and taunt skills the moment he struck. She successfully drew the general's aggression toward herself, daring him to keep his eyes fixed solely on her. Under the influence of the taunt, General Shisha's spear slammed directly into Iris's massive shield instead of its original target. The impact was deafening, causing the general to stagger so violently he nearly tumbled off the back of his manta ray. Fortunately, his mount retreated just in time to absorb the recoil, while Iris, on the other side, fared much better. She merely swayed back a couple of steps before regaining her footing, just as Aegeon finished charging his powerful skyward strike. Before releasing the shot, he activated God's Wrath, using its invisible pressure to pin General Shisha's body in place. The general's eyes widened in shock as he struggled to break free, but by then, the skyward strike was already screaming toward him. Shisha's pupils contracted with terror as the very scent of death seemed to rush up to meet him. Luckily for him, the internal force binding his body suddenly vanished, allowing him to frantically activate his armor's protective functions. A bubble-like shield instantly enveloped him, and only then did the general's pale complexion regain a bit of its color. However, when he saw the actual damage numbers from the hit, the corner of his eye twitched uncontrollably in disbelief. In all his long years, he had never seen such an absurdly powerful descendant, especially one who hadn't even reached their second job advancement. He muttered that with such power, it was no wonder Leiju had perished at Aegeon's hands. Aegeon didn't waste time with words. He summoned a bolt of lightning with a wave of his hand and began relentlessly firing at the general. But just as he was getting into the rhythm of the assault, a dark shadow silently materialized directly behind him. In a single heartbeat, time seemed to freeze as Aegeon sensed something was wrong and turned to see a dark shadow. A dagger lunged toward his heart, but at the critical moment, Yahello intervened with a desperate, timely block. He spun his body just in time to dodge the fatal blow, though his wings were slashed, grounding him for the time being. If not for Yahello, he would have been finished right then and there, a fact that left even Iris looking quite shocked. The shadow removed his hood, revealing himself to be Ilu, a notorious assassin from the Yushin Guild. Aegeon's original plan was to use his flight to lead the main assault against General Shisha. But now, unable to fly, he could no longer threaten the general, and it seemed the Yushin Guild had joined forces with the sea race. They had clearly reached some sort of agreement, making this battle far more difficult than we first imagined. High above the battlefield, General Shisha raised his spear and let out a thunderous command. He urged his sea race kin to charge, claiming that they were the true masters of Eternal Night City. The sea race warriors below seemed to be injected with adrenaline, suddenly fighting with a terrifying, renewed frenzy. They ignored their pain entirely, and even those with severed limbs continued to fight the soldiers of Eternal Night City with everything they had. The humans had been winning, but with just a few words, the general had completely reversed his army's failing morale. To be honest, it was incredible that a single shout could unlock their potential and make them forget their agony. This appeared to be war will, a rare talent usually reserved for the elite members of the dragon race. It seemed General Shisha's background was quite significant. Aegeon sighed and gently patted Yahello on the head. He told her it looked like they might actually meet their end here today, but Yahello just looked back with a determined gaze. She told him that didn't sound like the legendary expert she knew, promising to keep his health full no matter what. With that, Yahello raised her staff, and his health, which had dropped to a third, was fully restored in an instant. Seeing her so full of confidence, we see the fire of battle reignite in Aegeon's eyes once more. Iris watches the brutal battlefield, her heart filled with a sudden, burning resolve as she gazes at Aegeon's back and drops to one knee. She offers her life as witness, vowing to become his shadow and his shield from this moment forward. No matter if the path ahead is filled with thorns or the fires of war, she tells herself she will always stand in the gap. It is a loyalty that remains until death, as eternal as the stars themselves, or so she believes. Standing tall once more, Iris points the tip of her blade toward the heavens. In her own name, she swears a sacred oath to protect Aegeon with everything she has. Suddenly, a massive pillar of golden light erupts from the ground, and for a brief moment, the entire battlefield seems to fall silent. We see a notification appear. The Holy Knight Iris has officially bound Aegeon as her protected target. From now on, all blessings from Iris are increased by a staggering 100%, and we watch as the layers of light begin to stack. Aegeon becomes the brightest light in this corner of the world, his status bar overflowing with more buffs than he can even count. But one detail stands out with perfect clarity, his attack power, which begins to skyrocket after receiving those numerous blessings. It reaches a terrifying 2.24 million, the true, overwhelming power of a Guardian Covenant, it seems. While he stands there in awe of that incredible number, Iris quickly moves to his side. She tells him not to daze off and to help her finish General Shisha, because once the general falls, the sea race will be leaderless. With the crisis potentially solved, Aegeon simply nods, and the two of them charge forward together. Iris immediately uses her taunt skill on General Shisha, calling him a sharkhead and demanding he face her. With a roar of pure rage, the general falls for the bait and charges directly toward her. As Iris and General Shisha begin their fierce duel upon the city walls, Aegeon realizes he has a small window of opportunity. While she draws all the enemy's fire, he quickly opens the diamond chest he earned from defeating the Flying Fish Commander. We see them locked in combat on the wall, while Aegeon takes full advantage of the distraction Iris is providing. He quickly opens the diamond chest earned from defeating the Flying Fish Commander, and a notification chimes. He has obtained the Sea God's Watch. It is a diamond-grade weapon featuring the active skill, Breath of the Tide, and several powerful passive abilities. With Sea Race Nemesis and Sea God's Protection attached, Aegeon realizes the true value of this longbow lies in its active skill. Since General Shisha's melee attacks are being blocked by Iris, Aegeon decides it is time to switch to long-range combat. The general clearly underestimates the protective capabilities of a Holy Knight, as every ranged attack aimed at Aegeon is intercepted. Iris blocks everything with a massive shield of light, telling him to ignore her and focus entirely on his damage output. And so, his arrows never stop flying, a relentless strategy that sees him dealing over 1 million damage with every single shot. Finally, General Shisha's protective barrier reaches its limit and shatters with a deafening crash, much to the general's utter disbelief. Seeing the barrier break, Iris shouts for Aegeon to take the shot, and he knows exactly what to do next. He draws his bow, charging the arrow of the heavens skill until a pale blue bolt of energy begins to hum with power. The arrow streaks toward the general's face like a falling star, yet Shisha remains strangely calm, showing no intention of dodging. Just as the arrow of the heavens is about to find its mark, something unexpected happens, as it often does in these moments. A blinding golden light erupts from the general, so bright that everyone on the city wall is forced to shield their eyes. Only Aegeon, using the power of his Eye of Houtsong, can see the source of the light, a single, shimmering dragon scale. It seems the general truly does possess the blood of dragons, and he growls a warning to a hidden little rat to finally take action. He threatens that if this mysterious ally doesn't strike now, their agreement will be considered null and void. Suddenly, Aegeon feels a cold chill on the back of his neck and moves purely on instinct as a dark shadow lunges from the air. The blade grazes his throat as he rolls away, pressing his back against the wall while the golden light finally begins to fade. A slender figure slowly emerges from the shadows. It is Yahello, an assassin sent by the Divine Palace Society. With a flick of his wrist, Yahello wastes no time and hurls 3 silver short blades directly at Aegeon. Iris sees Yahello lunging toward Aegeon and moves to help, but General Shisha steps in to block her path. The general declares that he is her opponent now, while the silver blades Yahello threw don't actually fly directly at Aegeon. Instead, they seal off his escape to the left, right, and above, as Yahello draws a short sword radiating an ominous black energy. The eerie blade arrives in an instant, and as Aegeon sees it, his pupils contract in sudden recognition of the weapon. It is one of the 10 sin-severing blades, specifically the Tenjun Chariot, the weapon of the most mysterious second-ranked assassin from his past life. We see Yunayo, having just recovered from the blinding golden light, realize the situation has turned dire and activates divine protection. She quickly casts a shield over Aegeon, but the moment the short sword strikes the barrier, it shatters into 1,000 pieces. The resulting blast wave flings Aegeon backward, and seeing that he is still standing, Yunayo breathes a small sigh of relief. She begins frantically casting healing spells, and Aegeon's health, which had dropped to a critical level, begins to climb rapidly. Cursing the healer, Yahello ignores the nearly recovered Aegeon and turns his murderous intent toward Yunayo instead, a truly dangerous turn. Aegeon's heart sinks, remembering why the owner of the Tenjun blade was so feared as the second-ranked assassin in his previous life. The secret lies in that short sword made from a demon's skull. Anyone killed by a weapon infused with demonic essence suffers a terrible fate. They are forbidden from resurrecting, and in this era where the projection has begun, dying in the game means dying for real. In desperation, he pulls out a one-time use item he obtained after defeating the flame demon, the demon's hell. Looking at the artifact radiating pure evil, he realizes there is no time to worry about the terrifying side effects of using it. He quickly bites his finger and lets his blood drip onto the demonic skull, activating the dark ritual. It is the day of the 7th month's great completion, a moment of profound and dark significance. In an instant, time itself seems to grind to a halt, leaving everyone in the vicinity frozen like statues in a gallery. A prompt appears, asking him to choose a target to bewitch, and he knows he must choose wisely. Once the selection is complete, he will have exactly 5 seconds to take total control of his enemy. He told himself to savor the sensation, the absolute power of controlling everything around him. Without hesitation, he twisted Yahello's perception, making General Shisha appear as the ultimate enemy that had to be eliminated first. When Aegeon opened his eyes again, we see Yahello already launching a full-strength strike directly at General Shisha. Meanwhile, far away in the undead geosciences, the Lich Glock suddenly sensed a strange and unsettling presence. It was the unmistakable scent of a demon, something General Shisha certainly hadn't expected to encounter here. Shocked that Ailu would actually attack him, the general instinctively tried to dodge, but the blow was simply too close. General Shisha collapsed onto his mount, his health nearly depleted, but as Ijian prepared the finishing blow, something went wrong. He found he couldn't lock onto the target, while Ailu crashed violently into the ground from midair. Ailu's wounds were bone deep and his health was gone, yet he didn't dissipate and respawn like a normal player would. Instead, he lay there motionless, as if he had truly died, a sight that left the exhausted Ijian deeply unsettled. To be honest, he didn't have the mental strength left to ponder all these illogical events unfolding before him. He could only watch as General Shisha fled in disgrace, while the Sea Race army began a slow retreat at the sound of the horn. The crisis of Evernight City had finally ended, and Iris approached him with a radiant smile, calling him her champion. She thanked him for his sacrifice for the city, and we see his favorability with Iris begin to climb significantly. Her favorability reached 70 as she thanked her guardian, a moment of rare peace in the midst of chaos. The players still holding the eastern wall cheered wildly as they watched the Sea Race army recede like a ebbing tide. The spectators who witnessed the battle were stunned, noting that the sheer damage output of his double-standard build was terrifying. No one could have withstood that. One of his arrows had apparently dealt over 10 million damage, which is quite a lot, naturally. The threat of the Sea Race had vanished, and just as everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief, a sudden piece of news hit the player community like a massive boulder dropped into the ocean, creating a literal tidal wave of shock. The threat of the Sea Race had finally been neutralized, and just as everyone began to breathe a sigh of relief, a sudden piece of news hit the player community like a massive boulder dropped into the ocean, creating a literal tidal wave of shock. A massive horde of undead had appeared to the west, and they were marching directly toward the city walls. This sudden development sent the players of Evernight City into a state of pure panic, wondering how this could even be happening. The plan only mentioned a Sea Race invasion, so the sudden arrival of the undead left everyone shouting for reinforcements to head west. They scrambled to support the western wall, knowing they couldn't allow the undead to set foot inside Evernight City. If they failed here, the system would likely judge the entire city defense as a failure, which would be a disaster, naturally. Fortunately, the undead from the Undead Mountains were generally easier to kill than the Sea Race, all things considered. As long as a priest applied a light blessing to the damage dealers, they could deal double damage to the skeletal foes. That advantage alone should have been enough, but while Ijian was receiving healing from Yaoyao, he received the grim news. Upon hearing about the undead army attacking the western wall, his mind immediately went to that Lich Glock. At that very moment, the ground beneath the battlefield began to tremble, rapidly splitting into a bottomless, dark crevice. Then, a massive hand made entirely of pure white bone gripped the edge of the rift and hauled a monstrous weight upward. A colossal skeleton king crawled out from the depths of the earth, leaving the spectators with only one thought in their minds. Run. The sight of a skeletal giant nearly 100 meters tall was, to be honest, absolutely terrifying to behold. While others couldn't make out the dark figure standing on the giant's shoulder, Ijian recognized him instantly. It was the Lich Glock. Lich Glock, a diamond tier boss at level 55, possessed skills like Undead Summoning and Dark Curse. He also wielded Blood Howl and Death Coil, but as Ijian scanned these attributes, he actually felt a sense of relief. It turned out that Glock's stats were quite similar to those of the Flying Fish commander he had already faced. The Lich looked far more intimidating than he actually was, and at this moment, Glock seemed completely indifferent to Ijian's surprise. He walked slowly toward Ale, who was lying motionless on the ground, as the Lich Glock raised a hand and gave a sharp wave. A smooth wound suddenly split open across Ale's neck, and a single drop of essence blood was pulled by an invisible force. The blood traced a strange, eerie arc through the air, flying straight toward the center of the Lich Glock's forehead. As we watch, Ale's body visibly shriveled up before our eyes, until even his skin crumbled away into gray ash. After absorbing that essence, the Lich's dry, pale bones began to shift, and his flesh started to reconstruct itself. It was as if his skeletal frame had been injected with a surge of some truly malevolent vitality. When Ijian tried to check Glock's attributes again, the system flickered with an error, unable to identify the target. Lich Glock had become a legendary tier boss with an unknown level. The monster had actually evolved, which was a terrifying prospect. Having regained his life, the Lich Glock surveyed the battlefield, his gaze sweeping over the surrounding chaos. His eyes locked onto a group of players fleeing toward Evernight City, specifically targeting a warrior with yellow hair. He casually raised his right hand and closed his fist in the air. The yellow-haired warrior seemed to sense something was wrong. Before he could even let out a scream, the man lost all signs of life under the weight of an irresistible, crushing force. We have to wonder what kind of power this is, to reach out from dozens of meters away and simply end a life. He had crushed the warrior like an insect, but there was no time to dwell on that. The shield bearers needed to hold the line. They tried to call for the fallen warrior to resurrect and return to the fight, but they couldn't reach him. The system simply stated that the person no longer existed. Meanwhile, far away from the digital battlefield, inside a large interactive gaming center, one of the gaming pods began to flash with a frantic, pulsing red light. The staff rushed to open the pod, only to find the man inside foaming at the mouth in a state of total collapse. Lich Glock clearly had no intention of stopping, raising both hands this time regardless of the player's classes or levels. If he locked onto them for even a second, they would lose all power to fight back. A truly hopeless situation, to be honest. Inside a hospital, a doctor notes with alarm that this is already the 8th case brought in with identical symptoms. Their brain activity has completely ceased, and every single one of them was playing a game called Star Element. When a nurse suggests reporting it, the senior doctor snaps at her to stay silent, as they have no proof. He warns her that if she wants to live a long life, she shouldn't question the powerful owners behind the game. Meanwhile, a shadowy figure asks their boss if they should intervene and silence the growing rumors. The boss remains indifferent, deciding instead to watch Ejian and see if he is truly the person they expect. Back in the game, as dozens of players fall around him, Ejian finds he can no longer stand idly by. Glancing at his newly repaired wings, he raises the sea god's watch and begins to whisper a plea to the spirits. His angelic wings fold inward, wrapping him in a sea blue cocoon that glows with a mysterious light. Moments later, the light shatters into brilliant sparks, revealing a form only possible by combining his two greatest artifacts. This is the sea god form. Unlike his previous moon god state, this one trades physical power for pure magic. It is the perfect counter for the skeletons and the lich currently sieging the city walls, to be honest. Without a word, he unleashes a fire cyclone, though in this state, the flames are a haunting, cold blue. The chilling wind carries a bone-deep frost, turning every skeleton it touches into nothingness in an instant. The blue vortex obscures Lich Glock's vision, giving the remaining players just enough time to scramble into Evernight City. As the cyclone fades, Ejian follows up immediately with a charged arrow of the heavens, aimed straight for the Lich's heart. But just meters away from Glock, a massive skeletal hand reaches out to intercept the projectile's path. The eerie blue flames begin to incinerate the Skeleton King's left arm, slowly turning the entire limb to ash. And yet, with a sickening series of cracks, the bone instantly regrows to its full, terrifying length. It was as if the devastating strike had never happened at all, a truly discouraging sight for our hero. Ejian tells himself that the Skeleton King is certainly no match for him, and he reassures his sister not to worry. He promises to make her bone soup once he defeats the monster, all while watching Yuying escape through the back gate of Evernight City. His focus returns to the battlefield, where we see that the other players can do little more than level up their skills from the safety of the walls. The melee players don't dare venture outside the city, as they haven't received any light buffs to protect them yet. Once targeted by Glock, they are as good as dead, while the Lich below commands his skeletal mages to keep up the pressure. They continue to batter the barrier of Evernight City, and it's clear the priests inside won't be able to hold it for much longer. Ejian calculates that if Yuying can just stall the Skeleton King for 10 more minutes, he has the confidence to take down Glock. But the question remains, how can they possibly hold out for 10 minutes? It seems as though the end is finally near. Just as he finds himself at a complete loss, massive pillars of light from teleportation scrolls begin to illuminate the interior of Evernight City. These pillars, over 20 meters wide, pierce the heavens and sweep away the dark clouds and deathly aura for miles around. And here we realize that it's a massive teleportation array, clearing the air of the suffocating stench of the grave. A player on the verge of collapse mumbles in disbelief as a voice full of confidence echoes from within the light. It is a familiar voice calling out to his double-standard brother, wondering aloud if his timing was just right. The speaker is none other than Batian Yi Dao of the Batian Guild, leading his members as they step out from the glowing pillars. Immediately after, members of the Qinghuan Guild emerge alongside their vice leader, the elegant Qinghuan Yuyu. She teases Ejian about owing her a favor, while Li Na and Zhao Yu also step through the light to join the fray. They bring a whole army of players with them, shouting that they've come to support their brother as the light finally begins to fade. In the final moments of the glow, High Priest Arenbo of the Holy Light Cathedral emerges with a host of priests. He addresses the young hero, declaring that the Holy Light Cathedral will be his most steadfast shield in the coming battle. With that, the priests begin applying light buffs to every melee fighter and start the urgent work of repairing the damaged barrier. Ejian tells the newcomers that they can catch up later, but for now, they need to clear out this trash. Without even looking back, he unleashes another massive fire cyclone, and to be honest, the arrival of his allies has acted like a stabilizing anchor for everyone's morale. The crumbling front line is instantly stabilized, and Ejian sets his sights on Glock the Lich, determined that the monster's head will be his.